Chapter 2481. Even if such spiritual energy was absorbed into one's body, it would have no effect on improving one's strength, because there was no more vitality in it. All it could do was support the use of martial techniques and cultivation methods. It could not be used to improve one's cultivation. Luo Qingtong blinked her eyes. She probably knew why this continent was called the Abandoned Continent. It seemed that it was really an abandoned continent that was no longer suitable for warriors to live in. After everyone arrived at that continent, the people of the Lian clan and the Chu clans circled around the abandoned continent. They swore that the guards of their clan's juniors weren't from their own clan, and that they wouldn't target the other clan's juniors with murderous intent. As a result, the juniors and guards of both clans began to enter the abandoned continent. Luo Qingtong followed behind the people of the Red Flame mercenary group and was sandwiched in the middle. Hu Zhan and the others were tall and strong, and they protected her very well. When she heard the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan say to begin, the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan in front of her had already begun to enter the abandoned continent. This was especially true for the top disciples who followed the elders. They were the first to fly into the palace. When Luo Qingtong followed the people of the Red Flame mercenary group and was about to enter, she suddenly heard a commotion in front of her. "Young master, it's the young master. I didn't expect the young master to come. I thought he wouldn't come." "Yes, I heard that the young master and the clan head have an agreement. If he gets the Tian Luo grass this time, the clan can't ask him how to use it. Moreover, the clan head wants to let him go. I don't know what the young master is thinking. Our Tianfeng Chu clan has such good resources and heritage, but he still wants to leave. Should I call him a country bumpkin or a country bumpkin?" The person who said this had a somewhat contemptuous look on his face, but his eyes were filled with a strong sense of jealousy that could not be dispersed. If he had such an opportunity, he would not be willing to give it up. "Isn't that so?" Many people agreed with his words. "But I heard that the young master's brain is a little short-sighted. He is not presentable at all. It's only because he is the only descendant of the clan head that he can become the young master." Someone gloated. "Sigh, it's also because the family head can't see past it. Otherwise, wouldn't Madame Xing be quite good? I think it's not a bad idea to let her be our madam. Yes, it's a pity that the patriarch isn't willing. Moreover, although young master's brain isn't very good, he's very talented. It's said that he completely inherited the clan head's bloodline talent." Not long after he returned to the Tianfeng Chu clan, he's already the number one among the younger generation of the Tianfeng Chu clan. If it were any of you, who would have the ability and talent? Everyone was talking at the same time. There were those who were envious, those who were jealous, and those who were full of admiration. Luo Qingtong listened with great interest. She was curious about the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family. She tried her best to poke her head out of the human wall formed by Hu Zhan and the others to see what the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family looked like. However, Hu Zhan and the others were really burly and tough. Luo Qingtong finally squeezed a little through the gap between them, but she only saw a flash of white light in front of her. In an instant, she swept into the abandoned continent. Chapter 2482. This is Luo Qingtong's eyes widened. Chu Lingfeng. She looked at Chu Lingfeng, who was riding Snowball. His entire body was tall and sturdy, and he looked extraordinarily handsome. She blinked her eyes. Damn, the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family was this big blockhead? Just as Luo Qingtong's eyes widened, Chu Lingfeng scratched his head. That's strange. Little Shui, did you sense it? Why do I feel like Master is nearby? It was said that the sixth sense of a simple-minded person was the most accurate. Chu Lingfeng was like this. Even if he was far away from Luo Qingtong, and Luo Qingtong was mixed in with a group of people. She had changed her appearance and gender, making it difficult for people to recognize her. However, he still had a faint feeling in his heart. That was why he paused when he entered the abandoned continent. However, this feeling came to Chu Lingfeng from time to time, especially when he had just arrived at the Tianfeng Chu family. Every day, he hoped that Master would quickly find him and bring him back, so that his mother wouldn't be worried. Therefore, every once in a while, he would have an illusion that Luo Qingtong had come to find him. Later on, when he was disappointed many times, he learned to restrain himself. His gaze swept over the place where everyone was gathered. He patted Snowball and continued to rush into the abandoned continent. He wanted to get the Tianluo grass. When he brought it back to find his mother and master, they would definitely be very happy. Especially Master. This Tianluo grass would definitely greatly improve Master's strength. When Master became powerful, he and his mother would have someone to rely on. They also would need to be afraid that the Tianfeng Chu family would find his mother and bully her. Chu Lingfeng's thoughts were actually very simple. When he was weak, he was saved by Luo Qingtong. Then Luo Qingtong saved Yin Yang. In his heart, no one was more powerful than Luo Qingtong. Even if the Tianfeng Chu family praised him as a rare genius of the Tianfeng Chu family and regarded him as their young master. But in his heart, only Luo Qingtong was the most powerful. Even if the girl's strength wasn't as powerful as his, Chu Lingfeng believed that it was only temporary. No one could compare to Master's strength and power. These people simply didn't know how powerful Master was. This was Chu Lingfeng's thoughts. But when he was at the Tianfeng Chu family, he still didn't mention anything about Luo Qingtong. Otherwise, if people knew that the young lord of the Chu clan had a master, they would definitely go crazy. They would immediately hunt her down and deal with her. Chu Lingfeng didn't want Luo Qingtong to be in danger because of him. So he patiently stayed at the Tianfeng Chu family. First, the Tianfeng Chu family didn't let him leave. Second, he didn't want the Tianfeng Chu family to know about the existence of Luo Qingtong and Yin Yang. Therefore, no matter what the Tianfeng Chu family asked, he didn't pay attention. He only wanted to become stronger. That's right, become stronger. During this time, Chu Lingfeng didn't do anything in the Tianfeng Chu family. He only wanted to become stronger. He didn't have many thoughts, and his brain wasn't very bright. He always remembered what Yin Yang and Luo Qingtong had told him before. That was, if other people asked him something, he shouldn't answer. As for taking advantage, it would be a waste not to take advantage of it. Master said that he couldn't treat himself unfairly anywhere. Chapter 2483. When he becomes strong, he can go back and protect his master and mother. Chu Lingfeng really wants to become strong. When he thought about how he was powerless to face Luo Qingtong and Yin Yang when he was unconscious, his heart ached and he couldn't forgive himself. So when he couldn't go back to the Tianfeng Chu clan, he desperately tried to improve himself. He inherited Chu Tiany's bloodline power. In the entire Chu clan, only he and Chu Tiany had this kind of ability. The Tianfeng Chu clan valued him very much. It was also because of this that he could become the young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan. All of the clan's resources were at his disposal. Whatever he wanted, it was all there. Chu Lingfeng didn't hold back and used all of the Tianfeng Chu clan's resources. He even beat up the younger generation of the Tianfeng Chu clan in order to seize their cultivation resources. In order to become strong, Chu Lingfeng didn't care about anything. What's more, he had no interest in the Tianfeng Chu clan. What did those geniuses think of him have to do with him? If he had the ability, then he would defeat him. If he couldn't defeat him, then the clan's resources would be given to him. What was there to talk about? Master said that if he could solve it with his fists, then there was no need to talk nonsense. If one fist wasn't enough, then two. What's more, the people of the Tianfeng Chu clan weren't good people either. On the surface, they accepted his identity, but behind his back, they called him a bastard. They disliked his birth and despised his mother. Chu Lingfeng once accidentally heard a group of elders talking. They said that if a woman like his mother was found, then they should just give her the position of a concubine. As for the wife of the clan head, that Madame Xing was more suitable. Hey, his mother had suffered so much for him. So how could he let his mother suffer such grievances? Not to mention a concubine. Even if his mother didn't want to be the wife of the clan head, he wouldn't let her be. He also wouldn't let the Tianfeng Chu clan find her. Don't think that he didn't know that the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to use his mother to tie him down. As for the man named Chu Qianni, his words were pleasant to hear. He said that he liked his mother and hadn't forgotten her even after so many years. But who knew if he was telling the truth? Moreover, if it wasn't for him, his mother wouldn't have suffered so much because she was pregnant with him, and his family who wouldn't have almost been ruined. Chu Lingfeng thought for a moment. His mother would definitely not want to see him. Therefore, no matter what the other party said, he was too lazy to respond, let alone reveal Yin Yang's existence. When Chu Qianni left the True Spill continent in the past, he hadn't specifically searched for information about the True Spill continent. Thus, he simply couldn't find the existence of the True Spill continent. Humph! Once he leaves the abandoned continent, he will be able to return to find his mother and master. Chu Lingfeng rode on Snowball and disappeared into the sky above the abandoned continent. After his figure disappeared, Luo Qingtong recovered from the shock of seeing him. Damn, this news was too exciting. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan was actually Chu Lingfeng, that big fool. She was worried that he would be summoned by his father using their bloodline connection, and that he would encounter some bad treatment. Now, it seemed that he was doing very well. As Luo Qingtong thought this, she couldn't help but laugh. Yin Yang had always been very concerned about Chu Lingfeng. Now that she had news of him, she would be able to feel at ease when she returned and told her. The young master of the Tianfeng Chu clan. Chapter 2484. Luo Qingtong frowned. The Tianfeng Chu family attached great importance to Chu Lingfeng, and they would not let him go easily. Moreover, although they attached great importance to Chu Lingfeng, it was because of his talent. They would not be so tolerant to Yin Yang. They might even use her as a tool to restrain Chu Lingfeng. This was a bit troublesome. It was not so easy for Yin Yang to get her son back. But this could wait until later. Yin Yang could also practice now. Once the strength of a soul sound master was improved, ordinary masters could not compare with her. It was not certain who would look down on whom in the future. Speaking of which, Chu Lingfeng still did not know that Yin Yang could practice. When she entered the abandoned continent and found him, she could give him a surprise. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong's smile deepened, especially when she thought of Chu Lingfeng, the silly big guy, who just scratched his head and looked around. Did that guy sense her existence, so he ran out to see her? Otherwise, how could he go in and then run out? Sure enough, silly people were particularly sensitive in other aspects. However, Snowball was her contract beast. Why didn't it move? Luo Qingtong did not sense the existence of Snowball herself. Otherwise, she would not have been so surprised when she saw Chu Lingfeng. She thought that the Tianfeng Chu family had used some means to temporarily block the connection between her and Snowball. She did not know whether it was by accident or on purpose. Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Now she already had two little guys, Humph and Tuanzi. In addition, Snowball had been following Chu Lingfeng all the time. It was not impossible for it to contract with Chu Lingfeng. However, she was very unhappy with the way the Tianfeng Chu family did. Did they want to take her contract beast by force? Interesting. If they wanted to take Chu Lingfeng by force, it would be fine. But if they had other ideas, haha, Luo Qingtong sneered. She had known for a long time that these big clans usually had a lot of dirty dealings. It had nothing to do with her in the past, and she didn't want to get involved. But if they really offended her and her people, then don't blame her for being impolite. Luo Qingtong was a person who never suffered a loss. Her mind was racing, but she didn't show it on her face. She just followed the crowd and looked ahead in surprise and excitement. He seemed to be very excited about the appearance of the young master of the Tianfeng Chu family. Everyone around her had the same expression, so it didn't seem out of place. As for Yi Qianxian and the others, their eyes lit up when they saw Chu Lingfeng. Master, it's Chu Lingfeng, the big fool by the evil doctor's side. Bei Qing's voice rang out in Yi Qianxian's mind. Yes. Yi Qianxian responded in a low voice. His eyes lit up as he looked at Chu Lingfeng. Chu Lingfeng had appeared here. If that woman was also here, even if she hid her identity, she would go and meet him, right? When that time came, he would be able to find her. Thinking of this, Yi Qianqian's deep black eyes revealed a hint of joy. When we arrive at the abandoned continent, find a way to find Chu Lingfeng and keep an eye on him. He gave the order. Yes. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others lowered their heads in excitement, as if they could see the hope of finding the evil doctor in the future. There was no other way. The evil doctor was too good at hiding. They had never seen such a powerful person. They had been searching for him in circles. Chapter 2485. Those noble ladies in Tiandu looked down on the evil doctors, but they didn't know that they were nothing compared to the evil doctors. They were only better than the evil doctors in terms of background and resources. What if they were in the evil doctor's position? They wouldn't even know how they died. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were excited, while Yi Qianxian subconsciously looked in the direction of Luo Qingtong. He wanted to see how she would react to Chu Lingfeng's appearance. But to his disappointment, Luo Qingtong's face was filled with excitement, no different from the others. He frowned and looked at Luo Qingtong for a while, then turned his head away. Yi Qianxian didn't know why he was so obsessed. He kept thinking that Luo Qingtong was Luo Xiaoqi. He had already checked her identity, but he still didn't give up. He pressed his forehead and decided to draw a line with her after they arrived at the abandoned continent, so that he wouldn't always have these inexplicable thoughts. Anyway, Chu Lingfeng had already appeared. If Luo Qingtong wanted to take part in this operation, she would definitely show up. As for Luo Xiaoqi, she had nothing to do with him. As Yi Qianren thought of this, she closed her eyes again. The Tianfeng Chu family and the Lin family of Flying Star acted very quickly. After the top disciples rushed in, it was Chu Xiaofeng's turn. This was also to prevent anyone from attacking the top disciples of the two families. Moreover, those who entered first would have the advantage. There was no problem in arranging the order of entry according to one's identity. Okay, let's go. When it was Chu Xiaofeng's turn, he said to Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian, and the others, "Follow me closely. Don't act on your own. When we get there, I'll tell you some simple information. In order to prevent any mistakes or omissions in this operation, the Tianfeng Chu family didn't mention anything about the abandoned continent. Everything was left to the people of Mercenary City to explore. Of course, the children of the Tianfeng Chu family had some information in their hands. For the sake of their own safety, they would also inform the mercenaries around them of the information that they knew. As for how much the children of the Tianfeng Chu clan knew, it depended on how high their status was. There is no doubt that some people know more and some know less. As for Chu Ke and Chu Yufei, one was from the direct line of descent, while the other was Madame Xing's daughter. Even if his current status was not as high as before, he still knew far more than Chu Xiaofeng, especially Chu Yufei. The amount of information she knew was comparable to those top disciples. Now that Chu Ku was with her, she knew a lot of things that she didn't know before. At this moment, she sneered at Luo Qingtong and the others and said, "That's right. Just follow him obediently. Don't lose your life because of it." You must know that this high-level abandoned continent used to have extremely high energy. There are many demon beasts and spirit plants living inside. Although there are many opportunities, the danger is 10 against 10. You must be very careful. As she spoke, she snorted lightly. Her gaze swept past Yi Qianxian. Then she raised her head arrogantly and said, "Of course, if you beg me, perhaps I will take you with me." Chapter 2486. To put it bluntly, Chu Ke still had her eyes on Yi Qianxian. She had her eyes on this man. She didn't know why, but she wanted this man to crawl in front of her. As long as she thought of this, her heart was very excited. The mercenaries by Chu Ke's side were all trash. They were low-level mercenary groups. Even if Yi Qianxian and the others joined her side now, it wouldn't be considered a violation of the internal rules of the Chu family. Moreover, she could casually abandon a low-level mercenary group. As for whether Chu Xiaofeng and the others wanted it or not, it was up to them. Chu Ke's eyes were burning. Chu Yufei listened to her and didn't object. Previously, she didn't want Chukur to be followed by Yi Qianxian. But now, she and Chukur walked to the side. She hoped that Yi Qianxian would come over. After all, this way, she could be with him. Compared to the arrogant and domineering Chukur, he would definitely think that a considerate, beautiful, and pleasant girl like her was many times better than Chukur. Chukur was a green leaf that was destined to set off the fresh flower that was her. With this thought in mind, Chu Yufei gently tugged at Chukur's sleeve to express her intention to persuade her. However, she didn't say anything. She only looked at Yi Qianxian and Chu Xiaofeng apologetically, as if there was nothing she could do. After hearing Chukur's words, Chu Xiaofeng immediately became angry. Chukur, are you trying to poach people in front of me? He laughed in anger. The information he had was indeed not as much as Chukur and Chu Yufei. Among them, the main variable was Chu Yufei. Her mother was Madame Xing, and Madame Xing had an extremely high status in the Tianfeng Chu family for so many years. Although she was a lowly woman brought back by the family head from a remote star region, it was said that she had saved the family head's life. For so many years, she had been respected in the Tianfeng Chu family because of her identity as his savior. And she was also very scheming. Very quickly, she gained a foothold in the Tianfeng Chu family and obtained the approval of a group of family elders. If the family head hadn't insisted, she wouldn't be Madame Xing today, but the wife of the family head. Under such circumstances, it was normal that Chu Yufei knew more about the abandoned continent than he did. After all, she was Madame Xing's only daughter, and when she was first born, she was mistaken as the daughter of the family head. It was only after a group of elders forced the patriarch to marry Madame Xing that the patriarch clarified that she was not his daughter. But even then, because the family head didn't have any children, he had always doted on her like his own daughter. Chooses and family. SSSDSS is of SSF of Chu. SSS. Chu Xiaofeng looked at Chu Yufei. He didn't intend to target her. Their bloodline was a firm supporter of the family head. Madame Xing had saved the family head's life, so he wouldn't target Chu Yufei. However, he wasn't so polite to Chukur. Chukur's expression froze the moment he said that. Chapter 2487. Didn't you say so yourself? These guards are all up to us to choose. Although they followed you before, if they suddenly don't want to follow you anymore and want to follow me, then you can't blame me, right? Chukur raised her head and responded with the words that Chu Xiaofeng used against her. Her voice was indescribably sharp. Okay. Chu Xiaofeng looked at her and smiled coldly. Which one do you want to follow her? Quickly go over now. The information I have is indeed not as much as hers. If he was persuaded by Chukur with just a few words, he didn't want such a person. If he came, he would only be a fence-sitter who would run when there was trouble. It was better to join Chukur and her group as soon as possible. When Chu Xiaofeng's voice sounded, Luo Qingtong and the others didn't move at all. The people of the Red Flame Mercenary Group and Yi Qianxian couldn't be bothered with Chukur and the others. The remaining 3 mercenary groups looked at Chukur as if she was an idiot. What kind of joke was this? Because she knew more information about the abandoned continent, she wanted them to follow her? She probably didn't know Luo Xiaoqi's ability, right? When it came to information about the abandoned continent, who could compare to this young man who had meticulous observation skills? Luo Qingtong could easily analyze the environment and habits of the mission items, and even how to deal with them, and what their weaknesses and restraints were. Under such circumstances, how could an arrogant and despotic woman like Chukur compare to her? She even used this to tempt them. What an idiot. They wouldn't follow her unless their brains were fried. Didn't they see that the mercenary groups behind her and the girl named Chu Yufei were all ready to move? Were they waiting for them to run over so that they could fill the empty space? The group of mercenaries all looked at Chukur with contempt, and no one moved. Chukur originally wanted Yi Qianxian and the others to come over and trample on Chu Xiaofeng's arrogance. In the end, Who would have thought that not only did Yi Qianxian and the others not come over, but even those ordinary mercenary groups didn't come over. Not only that, but they also looked at her as if she was a fool and a joke. These lowly trash. Chu Ku'er's face was twisted to the extreme, and her expression was unspeakably ugly. Beside her, Chu Yufei's expression was also a little ugly. After all, she was on Chu Ku'er's side. When the latter was humiliated, she, who had similar thoughts, also felt a little embarrassed. However, due to the fact that she was smart enough, she did not say anything the entire time. In fact, she did not even speak in support of Chu Ku'er. Thus, the humiliation and shock she received was not as intense as Chu Ku'er's. The latter was the one who had truly lost all face. Compared to being ignored at this moment, he was like a fool who was being laughed at by others. Chu Ku'er was so angry that she pointed at Luo Qingtong and the others. She was about to fly into a rage. At this moment, a dignified voice suddenly sounded from the side. "What's going on? Why are you still here?" This voice came from the Tianfeng Chu clan's strong cultivators. It was the elder of the Tianfeng Chu clan who had spoken. Everyone looked up and realized that other than them, the other disciples and guards of the Tianfeng Chu clan had all left. Grandfather! Seeing the elder of the Tianfeng Chu clan who had spoken, Chu Ku'er's mouth twitched, and she almost cried. Chapter 2488. Upon hearing her voice, Luo Qingtong immediately frowned. Chu Ku'er's grandfather, the third elder of the third branch? Luo Qingtong frowned as she watched the other party rush over. "What's going on?" The third elder looked over with a dignified expression. When he saw his granddaughter's tear-stained face, he immediately frowned and looked sharply at Chu Xiaofeng. "Chu Xiaofeng, did you attack Ku?" His voice was filled with anger. He didn't even ask for the reason and just pinned the crime on Chu Xiaofeng. The aura around him was about to suppress Chu Xiaofeng. The other elders behind him were one step behind and could not stop him at all. If the third elder were to suppress Chu Xiaofeng with his aura, he would immediately suffer internal injuries. In this way, when Chu Xiaofeng entered the abandoned continent, it would be difficult for him to move an inch due to his internal injuries. It would be good enough if he could preserve his life there, let alone fight for the sky Luo grass. At that time, Luo Qingtong and the others would not be able to act wantonly because of him. This was definitely not the result that Luo Qingtong wanted. With that thought, Luo Qingtong's eyes turned, and she suddenly pounced in Chu Xiaofeng's direction. Her movements were extremely ingenious, as she avoided Chu Xiaofeng's subconscious counterattack and pushed him back a few steps to the left. The two of them coincidentally avoided the third elder's oppressive aura. Seeing this scene, Yi Qianxian's eyes suddenly narrowed. Right at this moment, the third elder's furious voice resounded. "Bastard you!" He originally wanted to say that Luo Qingtong dared to suddenly appear and interrupt him to teach Chu Xiaofeng a lesson. But at this moment, Luo Qingtong's voice suddenly burst into tears. She really started to cry. She hugged Chu Xiaofeng's thigh and cried loudly, "Woo woo woo, I'm sorry. Young Master Xiaofeng. We didn't know what was good for us and implicated you. We will immediately switch places with the mercenaries behind Miss Ku. Let her mercenaries protect you. Third elder, please don't hit young Master Xiaofeng again." Luo Qingtong cried and said to the third elder, "It's all our fault. We were the ones who didn't know what was good for us and didn't want to exchange with Miss Ku'er's mercenaries. It has nothing to do with young Master Xiaofeng." Luo Qingtong's voice was extremely loud. Her cries could be said to be earth-shattering. As soon as she spoke, the gazes of the crowd all turned to Chu Ku'er, or rather, he was staring behind her. He saw that there was only a group of low-level mercenaries behind Chu Ku'er. Looking at the group of Yi Qianxian and the others behind Chu Xiaofeng, as well as the valiant-looking members of the Red Flame mercenary group, as well as the middle-ranked mercenary groups that didn't seem weak. Everyone from the Heavenly Wind, Chu clan, immediately understood what was going on. It turned out that Chu Ku'er didn't have the ability and could only find a group of low-level mercenaries to follow her. In the end, she wasn't satisfied and set her sights on Chu Xiaofeng. She wanted him to give his mercenaries to her in exchange with her. What a joke. She didn't have the ability and actually wanted to snatch someone else's guards. Not only that, she didn't manage to snatch them and even complained to the elders. And the third elder was actually biased towards Chu Ku'er. It seemed that the third elder's family was indeed very indignant about losing their status as a direct descendant. Otherwise, why would the third elder lay his hands on a junior of the family? Chapter 2489. Everyone in the Tianfeng Chu family thought so and immediately looked at the third elder with different gazes. As for Chu Xiaofeng, after hearing Luo Qingtong's voice, he quickly reacted. He secretly praised this young man from the Red Flame Mercenary Corps for his cleverness. At the same time, he clenched his fists and looked at the third elder with stubbornness and determination. He said loudly, "Third elder, why did you attack me? Is it right for Chu Ku'er to want to snatch my mercenary? Is there such a rule in the family? If there is, please enlighten me, third elder. Otherwise, the people in the eighth elder's line will never yield." Well said. When Chu Xiaofeng's voice sounded, another dignified voice also spoke at this time. Then, with a boom, a violent and vast power pressure pressed down on the third elder. In an instant, he was forced to take 2 steps back, and his face flushed red. It was obvious that he had just suffered a great blow. Granduncle. Chu Xiaofeng looked at the old man who appeared in front of him with a surprised and excited expression. The old man raised his hand and patted him on the shoulder. He praised, "You're very good. You didn't embarrass the eighth elder's line." At this point, he suddenly raised his hand and a strong wind blasted in Chu Ku'er's direction. With a smack, Chu Ku'er's face was slapped hard. In an instant, she was sent flying by the slap. "Oomph, you're not strong enough and have no one to follow you. Instead of reflecting on yourself, you actually want to snatch the mercenary of your own family? How shameless of you. The people in the third elder's line don't teach their disciples well. The people in the eighth elder's line will teach them a lesson for you." The eighth elder's expression was sullen. The scene of the third elder attacking Chu Xiaofeng just now really angered him. If the fault was on the eighth elder's line, then so be it. However, it was clearly Chu Ku'er who was rude and unreasonable and wanted to snatch the mercenary of their line's younger generation. The third elder did not distinguish between right and wrong and actually wanted to attack a younger generation. How could he tolerate such humiliation? The other party was so shameless, so why should he care about his status? This palm wind did not seriously injure Chu Ku'er, which was already the last bit of face he left for the family. He did not want to make things too ugly outside and become a joke to the Lin family of the Flying Star. But today's matter, he would never let the third elder and his people off. The eighth elder's words were aggressive, and the third elder's face was extremely ugly. He did not expect things to turn out like this. Chu Ku'er had actually complained to him because she had failed to snatch Chu Xiaofeng's mercenaries. Bastard, that vile spawn. How dare he? Chu Xiaofeng. S's line. He subconsciously, Xiaofeng's choose Chu Xiaofeng. And subconsciously, he thought for Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng, S Xiaofeng. Xiaofeng elder, Chu Xiaofeng, S line. That vile spawn had made him lose face. Faced with the eighth elder's scolding and the various gazes of the Tianfeng Chu family, the third elder's face suddenly turned purple. He wished he could give Chu Ku'er another slap and kill her. That would be better than making a fool of himself. Just as he was glaring fiercely at Chu Ku'er, Chu Yufei finally came to her senses from the turn of events. Chapter 2490. No, third elder, it's not like that. In her panic, she couldn't explain the situation clearly. At this moment, Luo Qingtong's pitiful voice sounded again. "That's right, it's all our fault. Miss Yufei, don't say any more. I know that we didn't know what was good for us. Miss Kuer wanted us to go over to her side, so we should have gone over. She sniffed and continued. It's us who didn't know what was good for us. Miss Kuer clearly said that her bloodline would inherit the Chu family sooner or later. We didn't want to break our promise to young Master Xiaofeng, so we didn't go over. If we knew this would happen, we would have gone over directly. It's our fault. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened. The moment Luo Qingtong's words came out, there was a moment of silence. The veins on Third Elder's face almost popped out. Scoundrel, you're talking nonsense. Kua would never say that, Third Elder said, but there was some uncertainty on his face, because he knew his granddaughter's temperament too well. She was arrogant and despotic, and always talked about her identity as a direct descendant. If she had been provoked by Chu Xiaofeng in a fit of anger because she had failed to get the mercenaries, she would have scolded him without thinking. He would still believe her. Evil creature, evil creature. If he had known that this evil creature was so capable, he would have broken her legs at home. He would have made it impossible for her to participate in this operation. Third Elder's expression was malevolent, and he was extremely regretful. When Luo Qingtong heard his words, she seemed to have thought of something, and her face turned pale in an instant. She nodded forcefully and shrank back as she said, "Yes, I didn't." Miss Kurt didn't say. I probably heard wrongly. Heard wrongly? How could he have misheard such a thing? Moreover, even if he had heard wrongly, Chu must have heard wrongly. This also meant that Chu Kuer should have said something similar. Otherwise, how could this young man say such things? The people from the Tianfeng Chu clan glanced at Luo Qingtong's figure. After seeing her strength, they were even more certain of her words. After all, they didn't believe that a low-level mercenary like Luo Qingtong would dare to frame a descendant of the Tianfeng Chu family. Everyone looked at the Third Elder with even more profound expressions. After the Eighth Elder heard Luo Qingtong's words, he suddenly sneered, waved his sleeve, and said, "So that's how it is. I was wondering why the younger generation of the Third Elder was so bold. It turns out that they have a backer. Third Elder, should I congratulate you in advance for taking over the Chu clan in the future?" The moment the Eighth Elder's words left his mouth, the Third Elder's face turned ashen. His lips twitched, and then he roared angrily, "This is all slander. Chu Tongming, this is definitely a scheme of the Eighth Elder's faction. We, the Third Elder's faction, will never admit it. I will not let this matter rest." With that, he waved his sleeve and ran away. He looked like he was about to flee. He couldn't stay here any longer. After the Third Elder left, Chu Yufei covered her mouth and cried out in shock. She only realized now that she had casually defended Chu Kuer and caused a lot of trouble. Who would have thought that the young man from the Red Flame mercenary group would pin such a huge accusation on the Third Elder's faction? Chapter 2491. Moreover, she didn't know what to say. Luo Qingtong's last sentence, she didn't say anything. She must have heard wrongly. He had cut off all her avenues of defense. Even if she stood up to prove that Chu Kuer didn't say that, no one would believe her. Not to mention clearing Chu Kuer's name of not snatching. Because no matter what she said, even Luo Qingtong would agree with her in the end and admit that Chu Kuer didn't snatch Chu Kuer. The people from the Tianfeng Chu family wouldn't believe it either. They would only think that Luo Qingtong denied it against her will because of the strength and power of Chu Kuer and the Third Elder's faction. Oh my God, this young man. Chu Yufei looked in disbelief at the young man who was walking towards the Red Flame mercenary group with his head lowered. When the latter walked in front of the Red Flame mercenary group, the mercenaries of the Red Flame mercenary group even raised their hands to pat his head. He raised his head and smiled. His smile was full of sunshine. This young man was too scary. When Chu Yufei looked at Luo Qingtong, Yi Qianxian was also staring at Luo Qingtong. When the latter rushed out to push Chu Xiaofeng away, he almost pulled her back. They were too similar, whether it was the trick or the vengeful personality. Even the action of rushing to Chu Xiaofeng and pushing him away gave him the same feeling as Luo Qingtong. She just avoided the Third Elder's aura. Was it a coincidence, or Yi Qianqian's eyes were fixed on Luo Qingtong? The latter felt his burning gaze and raised her head to see that his eyes were fixed on her body. She felt a burst of bafflement in her heart. What was wrong with this person? Did she show anything just now? Luo Qingtong carefully recalled her actions and words just now and realized that there was nothing wrong with them. The third elder had obviously attacked Chu Xiaofeng indiscriminately at that time. So, it was impossible to reason with him at that time. If he were to make a move on Chu Xiaofeng, even if the situation was explained later, he would not admit to it. The biggest possibility was that they would push the blame onto the mercenaries, saying that they had instigated Chu Xiaofeng to turn their clansmen against each other. Under such circumstances, and with Chu Ke adding fuel to the fire, it was very likely that all of them would be in trouble. Luo Qingtong felt that there was nothing wrong with what she had done. Moreover, he did not reveal his strength or ability. Why was this person staring at her? Could it be that he saw something? Luo Qingtong's eyes were alert. She instantly raised her guard against Yi Qianxian. She hadn't forgotten that the other party had come for her identity as Luo Qingtong. If the other party really found clues about her relationship with Luo Qingtong, it would be very disadvantageous for her and the true Spill continent. Luo Qingtong's thoughts turned. She did not avoid Yi Qianxian's gaze. Instead, she walked towards him. How is it, brother? Aren't I very powerful? Shouldn't you thank me? She smiled as she approached Yi Qianxian and whispered. At the same time, she raised her hand and slapped towards Yi Qianxian's arm. There was no other way. She couldn't reach his shoulder, but his waist, the other party did not allow her to slap him. His arm should be fine now, right? Luo Qingtong's movements were very bold. Chapter 2492. Thank you for what? His voice was cold. Even though he was wearing a mask and his voice was obstructed, she could still hear the bone-chilling coldness in his voice. He had never been stingy with his gentleness to anyone other than Luo Qingtong. In other words, no one other than Luo Qingtong could enjoy his gentleness. Thank you for solving a big problem for you, Luo Qingtong said with a smile. She approached him and pulled his sleeve tightly. She looked as if she was afraid that someone would hear her. She whispered in his ear, "If I hadn't solved the big problem of Chu Ke for you, you might have been ordered to follow Chu Ke by that old man, third elder. After all, her side is so pitiful. She only has a few low-level mercenary corps with her. How could third elder bear to do that? She must think that our young master, Xiaofeng, bullied her. Then she will cry and ask you to go over. Ah, then you will be in trouble." Luo Qingtong sighed and shook her head as she spoke. Is that so? Yi Qianxian listened to her excellent performance and felt that even her ability to lie through her teeth was exactly the same as that woman. Thinking of this, he was about to raise his hand and push Luo Qingtong away because she was too close to him. Then he looked at her coldly and said, "Didn't you say that she wanted us to go over together? Why am I the only one now?" He reminded her of what she said before. It was not for him alone. I was just saying that on purpose to fool the heavenly Winchu clan. Luo Qingtong's eyes darted around. She admitted without hesitation that she had been fooling around. You see, that woman Chu Ke's eyes never left you. Even a blind person would know that she was coveting you. In short, I saved your beauty. Ahem, no, your chastity. Ahem, that's still not right. In short, I saved you from the abyss of suffering. So, brother, let's sever our previous apology. No, we're even, right? As Luo Qingtong spoke, Yi Qianxian's expression darkened, and it was getting darker and darker. He looked at the young man whose words were as irritating as the woman's, and his thin lips curved into a cold arc under the mask. Beauty, chastity? Cut him in half. Yi Qianxian was so angry that he laughed. So, you came here just to tell me this? Yeah. Luo Qingtong nodded without hesitation. Nonsense, if it wasn't for this. Why did she suddenly run over to talk to him? Of course, it was also to dispel his suspicions. After all, he had already looked at her with such a gaze, but she didn't avoid it. Instead, she purposely moved closer to him. She had a clear conscience, right? On the other hand, she really didn't know how to sew. Luo Qingtong looked eagerly at Yi Qianxian and suggested seriously, "Look, brother, you're not at a disadvantage. A piece of clothing in exchange for your chastity. You've made a huge profit, you know? Look at your handsome body. If you really end up in Chu Ku'er's hands, you'll be eaten clean. So, hurry up and wash it. Do you agree?" However, just as Luo Qingtong looked eagerly at Yi Qianxian, the man's cold voice suddenly rang out. "I don't agree." As soon as Yi Qianxian spoke, Luo Qingtong's voice instantly stopped. Chapter 2493. You don't agree? Are your clothes more important than your chastity? Luo Qingtong glared at Yi Qianxian. The other party's answer was completely out of her expectations. This man just wanted to go against her, didn't he? Luo Qingtong deeply suspected that the other party was doing this on purpose. What the hell? Wasn't he unwilling to have anything to do with her before? Why was he like a piece of sticky candy that she couldn't get rid of? Luo Qingtong glared at Yi Qianxian. The latter was delighted to see her bristling like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. Even when Luo Qingtong repeatedly mentioned the taboo of his chastity and beauty, he didn't care so much. The haze and coldness in his eyes dissipated a lot. Just so you're clothed properly. Of course, you can choose another path and overturn what you just said to the Tianfeng Chu family. However, even if you can do it, when I go over to Chu Ku'er's place, I will ask her to bring you along. As soon as Yi Qianxian said this, Luo Qingtong instantly fell silent. MMP, you win. Luo Qingtong gave Yi Qianxian the middle finger in her heart and then left gloomily. Looking at her back as she left, the corners of Yi Qianxian's lips curled up slightly, but then he quickly suppressed it. What was going on? Facing the other party, he became more and more happy. He had clearly decided to draw a line with the other party, but when he heard that she wanted to cut ties with him, an inexplicable anger rushed up in his heart, and he rejected her without hesitation. Was it because the other party was too similar to Luo Qingtong? So, he couldn't accept the other party drawing a line with him? Yi Qianxian frowned and stared at Luo Qingtong with gloomy eyes. As soon as Luo Qingtong turned around, she felt Yi Qianxian's gaze on her. She cursed in her heart. Was this person done yet? Was this not enough to dispel his suspicions? Luo Qingtong gave Yi Qianxian the middle finger in her heart, and then returned to the Red Flame mercenary group. When the latter and the others saw her return with a gloomy face, they couldn't help but laugh. Gu Yifeng rubbed her head and chuckled. What's wrong? Little Seven came back after being defeated? Did you fail to ask for a favor and get rejected? As soon as he said that, the crowd laughed even louder. Luo Qingtong gritted her teeth as she looked at her teammates who were kicking her when she was down. What sin had she committed to meet such a group of people? Not only did he not seek justice for her, he even mocked her. Luo Qingtong forgot that this was entirely her own fault. Who told her to go against Yi Qianming? Just as she was looking at the Red Flame mercenary group angrily, Chu Xiaofeng returned from the Tianfeng Chu family's team. He had just been called over to ask questions. Although the Tianfeng Chu family believed Luo Qingtong's words, they still had to ask more questions. The ambition of the third elder's family was destroyed. This was not a trivial matter. The Tianfeng Chu family would definitely investigate it carefully. Not to mention others, the eighth elder's family would never let go of this good opportunity. Speaking of which, Luo Qingtong had helped them a lot. Therefore, Chu Xiaofeng was looking at Luo Qingtong with joy in his eyes. Haha, not bad. You're really something. As he spoke, he threw a punch at Luo Qingtong with a smile on his face. You're called Luo Shaoqi, right? Well done. When we get to the abandoned continent, I'll protect you. His fist was aimed at Luo Qingtong's chest. It was originally an action between men to express their feelings and gratitude, but Luo Qingtong's face turned green. Damn it, you could have hit anywhere, but you just had to hit my chest. She stared at Chu Xiaofeng's fist. She really couldn't dodge or block it. Chapter 2494. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed over from the side. Luo Qingtong sensed the appearance of this gust of wind. She didn't resist and allowed this gust of wind to push her body back. In this way, her body just missed Chu Xiaofeng's punch. The latter's fist directly hit the air in front of her. Chu Xiaofeng was stunned. Although the punch he just threw didn't carry any power, it was just a simple punch. But with Luo Qingtong's strength, she shouldn't have been able to dodge it. He was puzzled in his heart, but his attention was quickly attracted by Yi Qianxian and the others who were walking over. We should go. The others have been in the abandoned continent for a long time. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold. The pair of eyes hidden behind the mask didn't even look at Luo Qingtong. If Luo Qingtong didn't feel that the gust of wind was indeed coming from his direction, she wouldn't have been able to tell that it was him. Why did this man suddenly help her? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. Thinking of Yi Qianxian, suspecting that she was Luo Qingtong, she immediately frowned. Could it be because of this that he deliberately took action? He even suspected that she was Luo Qingtong. Fortunately, she didn't act rashly. But then again, he had clearly patted her chest and touched her Adam's apple. She was completely in the appearance of a man. Why was he still so stubborn? Luo Qingtong was also speechless. If it weren't for the fact that she really didn't have something growing down there, Luo Qingtong would have taken off her pants and shown it to him. Did he have to be so persistent? There's something wrong with your brain. Big brother. Luo Qingtong was speechless at Yi Qianxian's stubborn attitude of suspicion. If it were someone else, they would have long been dispelled by her several methods. This person was so difficult to deal with, really troublesome. Fortunately, her small illusion pill had almost no flaws, so she wasn't afraid of him checking, unless he took off her pants. But the other party didn't look like someone who would do such a thing. Luo Qingtong's gaze lightly glanced at Yi Qianxian's cold and heavy aura. She wasn't worried. What's more, even if the other party really took off her pants, she could think of a way to deal with it. It was just a little troublesome, and there was no guarantee that she wouldn't be exposed. Let's see who could outplay who. With this thought, Luo Qingtong relaxed a little. As for Chu Xiaofeng, when he heard Yi Qianren's words, he had already forgotten that Luo Qingtong had just dodged his punch. Yi Qianya's words reminded him that he was already far behind the others. Although he had gained the recognition of the clan, and even obtained the opportunity to deal with the Third Elder's faction, it was not worth it to fall behind. Of Luofeng, of Luofeng, of Luofeng, of Luofeng, of Luofeng Zes. Of Luf Luofeng Ung, Luf Luofeng of Luo. Of Luofeng is of Luofeng. If he could stand out from the other disciples, it would be of great benefit to him. What's more, there were many heaven and earth treasures in the abandoned continent. Because the Tianluo grass had been bred, the other heaven and earth treasures had also benefited from it. The spiritual flowers and herbs that should have withered and died out long ago were all nourished by the power of the great Tao and glowed with a different kind of vitality and vigor. Under such circumstances, they were completely different from the spiritual flowers and herbs that grew elsewhere. Whether it was in terms of effect or level, they were much higher. Chu Xiaofeng naturally wanted to take more back. After all, there was only one Tianluo grass, and it wasn't easy to get. Chapter 2495. Let's go, he said to Luo Qingtong and the others, and led them to the abandoned continent. At this moment, among the groups from the Heavenly Wind Chu family and the Lin family, only Chu Ku'er's group and their group had not entered the abandoned continent. After they left, Chu Ku'er and Chu Yufei also walked out of the Tianfeng Chu clan's team. Chu Ku'er's face was covered in tears, and there was a big palm print on her face. The Eighth Elder did not use too much strength in that slap. But even so, Chu Ku'er fainted from a slap. Half of her face was swollen like a steamed bun. It would take at least 180 days for the swelling to subside. And this was the result of the Eighth Elder deliberately showing mercy. Otherwise, Chu Ku would have died under his palm. At this moment, she was crying bitterly. No matter how she tried to explain, the Tianfeng Chu clan's people did not listen. They even looked at her as if she was an unteachable child and drove her out like she was trash. Chu Ku'er's heart was filled with indescribable hatred. Be asterisk to say, that Luo Xiao Qi, I will not let her go. Chu Ku'er did not expect that she just wanted to trample on Chu Xiaofeng's arrogance. But in the end, she caused such a big trouble. God knew that when she woke up and learned what had happened to her clan, she almost went crazy. She had never said anything that would harm her bloodline, but everyone felt that she had said it. Chu Xiaofeng's testimony made her unable to defend herself. And all of this was because of Luo Xiao Qi. If it were not for her, she would not have become like this. And now, the unlucky one should be Chu Xiaofeng. After learning about what had happened from Chu Yufei, she hated Luo Qingtong to the core. Luo Xiaoqi, just you wait. She would definitely die a horrible death. Chu Ku'er's face was gloomy. She would be despised by the entire Third Elder's clan. If she continued to stay in the Tianfeng Chu clan's team, she might be beaten to death by the Third Elder, who rushed back in exasperation. Under such circumstances, not to mention being injured, even if she was seriously injured, she would crawl to the abandoned continent. That was her only chance to turn things around. If she could stand out among the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan, not only would she be able to obtain the Tianluo grass, but she would also be able to obtain countless other treasures. This would greatly improve her status in the Tianfeng Chu clan in the future. Otherwise, she would really be finished. The more Chu Ku'er thought about it, the more resentful she felt. She firmly disagreed with Chu Yufei's persuasion to stay with the Tianfeng Chu family to recuperate. Sister Yufei, I know you're doing this for my own good, but I can't stay in Tianfeng Chu's house. Otherwise, I'll be beaten to death by my father. Chu Ku looked at Chu Yufei and said firmly while crying. Chu Yufei was also in a bad mood. She didn't want to travel with Chu Ku'er at all. Previously, it was because Chu Ku'er's identity was useful to her. Now, Chu Ku'er was already someone that everyone in the Tianfeng Chu family wanted to beat up. How would it help her? Not only that, but she was also a big burden. When she thought of the mercenaries that Chu Ku'er had recruited and how they were all repulsive and low-level mercenaries, she felt very angry. She actually had to bring such a burden with her. How could she be happy about this? However, even if she was unhappy, she could only bring her along. Chapter 2496. Chu Yufei was depressed in her heart, but on the surface, she forced a smile and said to her, "All right, as you wish." As she spoke, her fingers clenched tightly. At this time, Luo Qingtong and the others had already landed on the abandoned continent. This was the first time that Luo Qingtong had come to another continent. The previous Heavenly Wind Inscription City and Mercenary City, although large and located in the Heavenly Wind domain. But they were special existences in the Heavenly Wind domain. They were only cities in the sky, not continents. This abandoned continent was another foreign continent that Luo Qingtong had truly set foot on after leaving the True Spill continent. The spiritual energy here was just like what Luo Qingtong had sensed before. Although it was abundant, it was full of a decaying aura. It was even more serious than what Luo Qingtong had sensed before. It was completely impossible to absorb. This spiritual energy formed a miasma-like existence in the air. It was as black as a thick fog. If this spiritual energy was absorbed into the body, not only would it not enhance one's strength, but it would also block their meridians, making it impossible for them to display their strength normally. If they absorbed too much of it, it would completely block their meridians, making them a cripple, unable to display any strength. This meant that the people who entered this abandoned continent could no longer use the spiritual qi to replenish their strength. But the strength in their body would eventually be exhausted one day. Under such circumstances, how could they replenish their strength? Could it be that they would have to fight hand to hand? Wasn't that too ridiculous? Luo Qingtong raised her eyebrows. The others also showed a look of surprise. On the contrary, Chu Xiaofeng's face didn't show much surprise. Obviously, he had already expected such a situation. This abandoned continent has been abandoned for a long time. The spiritual energy here can no longer be used. But the spiritual herbs here can be used. I don't know why, but the heart of this dead continent suddenly condensed heavenly net grass. Under such circumstances, the spiritual herbs and precious herbs here have all recovered. The power of the Qi of the Great Way contained in them is enough for us to replenish our strength. However, those spiritual herbs and precious herbs are extremely hard to come by. The places where they are located are all guarded by magical beasts and demonic plants that have been contaminated by the waste spiritual Qi. All of you have to be careful and don't recklessly use the power within your body. Once the energy in one's body is exhausted, one will be no different from a cripple in this abandoned continent. Chu Xiaofeng instructed everyone. Yes, everyone acknowledged in a deep voice. At this time, Luo Qingtong saw a group of mercenaries waiting in front. Or rather, they were the representatives of the mercenary groups that came in before them. When the mercenaries saw Luo Qingtong and the others land on the ground, they immediately surrounded them with smiles. Little seventh young master. Everyone had flattering smiles on their faces as they tried to curry favor with him. After the mercenaries came to this abandoned continent, they realized that they were right to insist on calling Luo Qingtong along. Damn it, almost all the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent couldn't be used. They could only rely on their own strength and the spiritual herbs and precious herbs in this abandoned continent to replenish their strength. All the spiritual herbs and precious herbs that they brought were all corroded by the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent. In the end, they were completely rotten and could no longer be used. Chapter 2497. It was also because the Tianfeng Chu clan didn't tell them about the situation on the abandoned continent. One had to know that the environment on the abandoned continent was so harsh and the conditions were so harsh. Even the greediest people would think twice. After all, it would be a great loss if they died on the abandoned continent. For warriors, without strength, there was no guarantee. It was too dangerous on the abandoned continent. It was no wonder that the Tianfeng Chu clan had to summon the people of the Tianfeng mercenary city to act as guards for their juniors. Firstly, it was to prevent the two clans from tampering with the selection of guards. Secondly, it was to reduce the casualties of their own clans. Damn it, they really had a good idea. However, even if the people of the Tianfeng mercenary city knew about this, they could only accept it. After all, they were already here. How could they leave now? Even if they wanted to leave, the Tianfeng Chu clan guarding outside wouldn't allow them to do so. Besides, they had signed an employment agreement with the Tianfeng Chu clan. They could only accept it. But fortunately, they remembered that they had called Luo Xiaoqi over. With Luo Xiaoqi, they would have a guarantee on the abandoned continent. Luo Xiaoqi's observation ability was more useful than anything else on the abandoned continent. Everyone was very glad that they were thick-skinned and that Elder Fu was shameless. Otherwise, where are they going to find someone to guard the abandoned continent for them? They couldn't count on the Tianfeng Chu clan. Perhaps they couldn't see as clearly as Luo Xiaoqi. Everyone was looking forward to Luo Qingtong's appearance. Seeing that Luo Qingtong, Chu Xiaofeng, and the others didn't appear for a long time, they were about to die from anxiety. The others and the disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan left first. They were left here to wait for Luo Qingtong. They would catch up later. Seeing Luo Qingtong appear, they were so excited that they almost cried. Quick, quick, quick! Little seventh young master, look around. Is there anything we need to pay attention to? Also, this is the secret signal that we have discussed. Young Master Xiaoqi, if you encounter something that requires special attention, you must mark it with the secret signal and tell us if we can touch it or not. The group had already come up with a set of danger level markers that were suitable for them. From no danger to absolute danger and untouchable, A total of 5 levels were waiting for Luo Qingtong to mark them. At that time, they would not listen to the Tianfeng Chu family. They would only listen to Luo Qingtong. She told them not to touch it, and they were determined not to touch it. They only touched what they were told to do. Otherwise, he would lose his life in this abandoned continent. Yes, Luo Qingtong looked at them and nodded with a smile. She had previously promised these mercenaries that she would keep an eye out for them on this abandoned continent. Luo Qingtong was very clear that in this abandoned continent, her strength was not strong. If he wanted to obtain the Sky Luo grass, he would have to resort to some extreme measures. These mercenaries would be her help at a critical moment. Most importantly, these people had always protected her before. Their nature was neither good nor bad, but they knew how to repay kindness. Luo Qingtong didn't mind helping them. Not to mention that they had stood up for her in front of Chu Kuer before. Okay, take a paper and write it down yourselves. Luo Qingtong glanced at the set of danger levels they gave and memorized it in her heart. Chapter 2498. Her blood-red eyes opened silently. With just a glance, she was able to see through the camouflage of many spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. There were also some demonic plants and geographical conveniences. Luo Qingtong's explanation explained everything. Soon, he told her about the dangers and the characteristics of the spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs that he could see in the periphery of the abandoned continent, as well as the other spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs that he could infer based on these characteristics and habits, as well as the geographical environment of the other spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. All right, that's about it. Luo Qingtong's expression was indifferent. She clapped her hands and collected a spiritual herb in her palm. A bloodthirsty, demonic plant emerged from under the spiritual herb. In an instant, it was nailed to the ground by Gu Yifeng and the others who were following closely behind her. It turned out that this demonic plant was actually coiled around that spiritual herb. The two grew together and were almost intertwined into one. There was no difference between them. Only by choosing the right spiritual herb and grasping its heart meridian, when pulling it out, would the demonic plant not be brought out. At the same time, one would not be attacked by the demonic plant during the plucking process. Otherwise, if one was stung by the bloodthirsty demonic plant, the wound would continue to bleed. If they could not find a way to treat it, they would bleed to death. Not only that, the demonic plant could expand and contract freely. It was as thin as a strand of hair. Once it succeeded, it would immediately wrap around and turn into a cocoon-like thing, wrapping the human or beast. Its roots would penetrate deeply into the other party's body until the other party's blood was sucked dry. Only then would it fall off. It was simply an invisible killer. Everyone watched as Luo Qingtong pulled out the spiritual herb without any hesitation. Looking at the demonic plant that was nailed to the ground by Gu Yifeng and the others, it was still twisting and stretching out its hair-like roots, desperately trying to find flesh and blood. Suddenly, they couldn't help but shudder. Damn it, this was too scary. Damn it. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong's explanation, how would they know that there was such a danger hidden under these spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs? Didn't they still come to pluck the spiritual herbs after defeating the guardian beast? At that time, wouldn't they die without a burial place? Everyone's expression was horrified. Chu Xiaofeng was also astonished to the extreme. Previously, when the group of mercenaries appeared, he was especially vigilant. He was afraid that the other disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan were plotting against him, so he deliberately sent people to wait here. However, it didn't seem like it. These people all came from different mercenary groups, and the badges they wore were all different. Under such circumstances, he finally relaxed his nerves a little. Otherwise, he would have made a move the moment these people appeared. Then he realized that these people were all here for Luo Qingtong. He was still puzzled. Although this young man was quick-witted, he didn't seem to be strong. Why were these people chasing after him so much? In fact, it wasn't just weak. Chu Xiaofeng had never seen a mercenary weaker than Luo Qingtong. He didn't know how someone who wasn't even in the Exalted Realm managed to get into the mission. When she found out that it was the mercenaries who had requested her to come, she was a little curious. But he still couldn't see what was so special about her. At this moment, Luo Qingtong made a move. Only then did he know how powerful the young man's ability was. He also had information about the spiritual herb in the other party's hand. However, he only knew that it was the Thousand Threads grass, which was very strange and rare. Although it was a top-grade spiritual herb, it was also very dangerous to pluck and couldn't be touched casually. Chapter 2499. Not only that, but Chu Xiaofeng was also stunned as he listened to Luo Qingtong and the mercenaries explain the general growing environment of the Thousand Threads grass and what kind of places it might be found. Based on the characteristics of the surrounding environment and the general scene, one could determine that the Thousand Threads grass was nearby dam. Even the top disciples of the Tianfeng Chu family didn't have such information. This Luo Xiaoqi was simply amazing. Only now did Chu Xiaofeng know what kind of treasure he had picked up. He had chosen the people of the Red Flame mercenary group because he had long understood the character and strength of the people of the Red Flame mercenary group. He also couldn't stand Chu Ku-er's arrogance, so he took them under his command. At that time, he didn't think so much. As for Luo Qingtong, it was because she was a member of the Red Flame mercenary group. Although Chu Xiaofeng was dissatisfied with her strength, he thought that she was alone and wouldn't hinder him from recruiting the people of the Red Flame mercenary group. So he didn't care too much. Who would have thought that he had picked up a treasure? Damn! No wonder when he was at the mercenary square, those people were so excited and rushed to sign up with him. Chu Xiaofeng thought that he was more charming, but it turned out that they all came for Luo Qingtong. Chu Xiaofeng's lips twitched. Fortunately, he didn't like to show off like some people. Otherwise, his face would really be swollen. Then he thought of Chu Ku-er, who wanted to use the information on the abandoned continent to recruit Luo Qingtong and the others, and he was overjoyed. No wonder the people around him didn't give him any face and didn't even go to an ordinary mercenary group. It turned out that they had Luo Qingtong as a treasure. Chu Ku-er relied on Chu Yufei's prestige and wanted to poach him, but she didn't know that he had a treasure on his side. Chu Xiaofeng had no doubt that if it weren't for the family limiting the number of guards each person had, all of them would come here. These people would most likely all run over to his side, causing the rest of the Chu clan's disciples to become powerless without any support. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but laugh. Luo Qingtong had previously helped him teach the third elder and Chu Ku-er a lesson. She had helped the 8th Elder's faction regain their face and reputation. She had even taken advantage of the victory and exposed the 3rd Elder's faction. Chu Xiaofeng had already decided that after entering the abandoned continent, he would protect Luo Qingtong. He didn't expect the other party to give him such a surprise. Perhaps he might really be able to return victorious from this trip to the abandoned continent. Even if he didn't get the Sky Luo grass, he would still get a lot of it. Thinking of this, his eyes lit up. After Luo Qingtong taught the mercenaries everything she knew, she dismissed them. At this moment, she suddenly felt a strong gust of wind rushing towards her. In the next second, her belt was abruptly lifted and she was lifted into the air. Yi Qianren carried her in her arms. "I'll take her away for a while." Yi Qianxian left this sentence and disappeared with Luo Qingtong. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even Chu Xiaofeng, who was about to approach Luo Qingtong and ask her how she knew, was dumbfounded. The surroundings were so dangerous. Where is he taking her? Chapter 2500. Splash. Luo Qingtong was thrown into the river by Yi Qianming. She splashed water all over her body, and her whole body was wet. "Hey, what are you doing?" Luo Qingtong's eyes widened, and she pretended to be angry at Yi Qianming in the river. She had already guessed what was going on when the other party took action. Thinking that the other party suspected that she was Luo Qingtong, she was afraid that he had a certain understanding of her identity as Luo Qingtong. In this way, It was normal that he couldn't control himself when he saw her ability to see through those spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. She didn't resist. She would let the other party see whether she was Luo Qingtong or not. Luo Qingtong's eyes were filled with anger, but Yi Qianming didn't care about her at all. He stared unblinkingly at the young man's body in the water. He watched as his body was completely soaked in the water. His clothes were all wet and stuck to his body. His thin lips were hidden behind the mask, and they were getting tighter and tighter. Luo Qingtong's figure was thin and thin. She was originally a petite girl with a curvaceous figure. But after taking the small illusion pill, she became a young man and looked very thin and weak. The clothes were pressed against her body, and soon her flat figure was revealed. Adam's apple, chest, but Yi Qianming's eyes swept over every part of Luo Qingtong's body. His eyes became deeper and deeper, and he became more and more disappointed. It wasn't her. He was really possessed. Once again, he suspected that Luo Xiaoqi was a woman, Luo Qingtong. But the other party was clearly a man. Yi Qianming stared at Luo Qingtong's chest without saying a word. The latter simply took off her robe, leaving only a thin undergarment, which outlined her outline and clearly revealed her flat chest. She raised her eyebrows at Yi Qianming and said, "How is it? Have you seen enough? Am I a man or a woman? Am I the Luo Qingtong you mentioned? Do you want to take off my clothes and see?" Luo Qingtong's heart was filled with hatred. She didn't know what was going on with this person. He was fixated on her identity as Luo Qingtong. This was a good opportunity for him to see clearly, so as to avoid any future troubles. She walked out of the water and ran her fingers through her hair. She let down her wet hair. Her whole body was wet. Walking out of the river like this, she looked like a bewitching siren. However, the ferocious and ugly birthmark on her face unconsciously destroyed some of her beauty. Luo Qingtong's figure was neither fast nor slow as she walked in front of Yi Qianming. She looked up at him and crossed her arms. "Do you want to strip me naked and have a look? Maybe." Her lips suddenly curled up. "It'll be bigger than yours if I take it out." That smile was so devilish and charming that Yi Qianming fell into a trance. It was too similar, but it wasn't. As Luo Qingtong came closer, Yi Qianming saw Luo Qingtong's flat body more clearly. His eyes were deep as he stared at Luo Qingtong's body. Then, with a swish, he disappeared in front of her. "Hey!" Luo Qingtong stared at his disappearing back. This person just left her behind and ran away. Damn it, how could she go back? However, Luo Qingtong also knew that the place Yi Qianming took her to was not far. As long as she waited here, Chu Xiaofeng and the others would soon find her. Therefore, she was not very anxious and just sat by the river and waited. In fact, she could go back by herself. But she had to put on a show. She was Luo Xiaoqi, who had no strength. Why should she go back by herself? Chapter 25:01. Damn it. Luo Qingtong stared at the two lumps that were rapidly swelling in front of her and suddenly covered her chest. MMP. The small illusory shaping pill lost its effect just like that. Luo Qingtong quickly took another small illusory shaping pill. Fortunately, she had refined a few more pills before, so she was waiting to take them when they lost their effect. However, because the small illusory shaping pill was in the abandoned continent, its aura was greatly reduced. Luo Qingtong estimated that it could only last for a few days. Damn it, when it rains, it pours. Fortunately, that man left first. At this time, Luo Qingtong was very glad that the other party left her alone. If not, her identity would definitely be exposed. But what was the other party's identity? Why did he persistently pursue her identity as Luo Qingtong? Luo Qingtong originally thought that the other party was from the Central Inscription Union, but now it didn't seem like it. The other party kept suspecting her. If he was from the Central Inscription Union, she was afraid that she would have been arrested long ago. But if not, who was the other party? While Luo Qingtong was thinking about this, she didn't notice that somewhere behind her, a pair of eyes were shocked at her change. Luo Xiaoqi was a woman. Yu Mingqian's eyes changed rapidly. The eyes inside were dark and deep. He knew that Luo Xiaoqi was Xie, but he didn't expect her to be a woman. Thinking of the various methods that the other party had revealed in Sky Wind Inscription City, unruly and unbridled, extremely confident and unrestrained. Yu Mingqian's eyes became darker and darker. Woman, no wonder she didn't let him get close. It turned out that she was a woman. That explained it. She was afraid that his service would expose her identity, so she had been resisting his approach. Then, should he use this identity to threaten her and make her reveal information about the divine inscriptions? Yu Mingqian thought so, and his eyes turned slightly. However, he quickly dispelled this thought. The White Jade Masked Man had been investigating Luo Xiaoqi's identity. Maybe there was a relationship between them. That man was too strong, and there were too many variables. If he exposed Luo Xiaoqi's identity, it might not be worth it. If the other party was not threatened by him and directly exposed his identity and joined forces with the White Jade Masked Man, Yu Mingqian's mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. She quickly turned around and left. After he left, Chu Xiaofeng and the others quickly came looking for him. Little Seven, are you all right? Chu Xiaofeng and the others were relieved to see that Luo Qingtong, who was sitting by the river, was unscathed. They were shocked when Yi Qianming suddenly kidnapped Luo Qingtong. Fortunately, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were there. They were not worried that Yi Qianming would harm Luo Qingtong. But why did they kidnap Luo Qingtong? Chu Xiaofeng, Gu Yifeng, and the others were filled with questions and couldn't help but ask. Luo Qingtong's face was full of smiles. Who knows? Maybe he's crazy. Am I right? She looked at Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others happily and asked. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others were speechless. They didn't know what to say. Their master's action just now was indeed a bit sudden. They looked at Luo Qingtong's wet clothes and probably knew what their master was thinking. Alas, Master, why did you do this? Chapter 2502. Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others sighed in their hearts. Looking at Luo Qingtong, Feng Yu stepped forward and apologized. I'm sorry, young Master Xiaoqi. My madam is missing and our young master is too anxious, so he's in a bad mood. If he offended you in any way, please forgive him. Madam? Luo Qingtong's eyes seemed to have caught something in an instant and looked towards Feng Yu. Is your young master surnamed Yi? She almost asked, but in the end, she forced herself to hold it back. She carefully examined the other party, not sure if they were Feng Yu and the others. But the other party said that the person just now was their young master and Luo Qingtong was their madam. Luo Qingtong really couldn't stop thinking about it. Her eyes turned and her mind flashed with Yi Qianming's every move when he checked her identity. Her heart became happier and happier. That stupid man. Luo Qingtong didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Yi Qianming's actions. It was such a simple thing, but he made it so complicated. As long as he said that he was Yi Qianming, how could she deny her identity? But he didn't say it. However, Luo Qingtong also saw something unusual in the way Yi Qianming and the others hid their identities. Although she didn't know why they were here and why they had to hide their identities, they must have their reasons. Therefore, even if Luo Qingtong had guessed Yi Qianming's identity, she still suppressed the joy in her heart. She didn't expose Yi Qianming's identity on the spot, but the corners of her mouth and the light in her eyes couldn't be suppressed. What's the matter? Your young master hasn't come back yet? Looking at Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and the others, Luo Qingtong could tell at a glance that Yi Qianming wasn't among them. Speaking of which, it was quite funny. She clearly had a special feeling for men, but because he was probing her, she ignored it again and again. The two of them were fools. They missed each other time and time again. Really, Luo Qingtong's face was covered in blood when she thought about how she had deliberately let Yi Qianming see her flat chest and told him that if she took it out, it might be bigger than his. It was simply, other than asking if she was Luo Qingtong, couldn't that damn man ask a few more questions? For instance, the true spill continent or Little Silver? What stubborn man? However, Luo Qingtong also knew that at that time, Yi Qianming probably didn't think so much. He only wanted to confirm whether she was Luo Qingtong or not. And at that time, she was in the appearance of a man. So in his disappointment, he naturally wouldn't ask any more questions. However, even if she looked like a man, Yi Qianming would still pay attention to her and suspect her. This made Luo Qingtong's heart full. Her lips were slightly raised, and her eyes were almost curved into a crescent moon. Her heart was filled with indescribable satisfaction and happiness. If he didn't care and love her too much, with Yi Qianming's arrogant and cold temperament, how could he suspect that the boy was her again and again? And it was after seeing the characteristics of a man on her body. That silly man, Luo Qingtong, couldn't wait to see Yi Qianming. However, the latter wasn't in the group, which made her anxious. Her attitude changed too quickly. Chapter 25:03. My young master hasn't come back yet. I guess he went to investigate first. Feng Yu answered without missing a single detail. Although he didn't know why Luo Qingtong asked this question, he still answered carefully. The other party gave him the same feeling as the evil doctor. Unfortunately, the identity of the other party was destined not to be the evil doctor. Master should have completely given up. If he didn't vent his anger, he probably wouldn't come back. Sai, what was love? It made people want to live and die together. Feng Yu and the others saw that their master was in a bad mood and felt bad. It was just that the identity of the evil doctor was difficult to investigate, so they couldn't do anything. From another point of view, this also proved that the evil doctor was very safe. Thinking of this, they felt a lot more at ease. It was just that their master suffered. Luo Qingtong knew that they had a different feeling with Yi Qianming, so she didn't ask any more questions. As long as they were here, that man would eventually come back. But why did they appear here incognito? Why didn't they reveal their identities when they suspected her identity? Did they encounter some danger? Luo Qingtong asked Bei Qing and Feng Yu indirectly. Bei Qing was easy to get information from, but Feng Yu wasn't so easy to deal with. However, Luo Qingtong still got a lot of information from them. They seemed to be hiding from some enemy. Luo Qingtong frowned. She left True Spill Continent a long time ago, so she didn't know what happened to Yi Qianming. But from the other party's strength, it seemed that the people who could make Yi Qianming and the others hide were from their side. She thought of the big trouble she provoked from the Central Inscription Master Union and was speechless for a moment. Were the two of them a match made in heaven? Both of them had provoked a great enemy of each other. But this enemy of hers was much more troublesome than Yi Qianming's side. Yi Qianming's people wouldn't do anything to him, but if he met the people from the Central Inscription Master Union, Luo Qingtong frowned and decided to hide her identity for the time being. She would never allow Yi Qianming to be involved in her grievances. That man loved her as much as his life, so she naturally had to love him and protect him. Her current status was well hidden. As long as she returned to the True Spill Continent, she would be able to rid herself of the Central Inscription Union. There was no need to expose herself ahead of time and involve Yi Qianming and the others. Of course, Luo Qingtong also had a guilty conscience. Thinking about how she had denied her identity time and time again, and how she had played tricks on Yi Qianming, she felt a toothache. She would wait until she left this abandoned continent and prepared to return to the True Spill Continent. Then, she would tell this man who she was. By then, his anger would definitely dissipate. Luo Qingtong thought and took out Yi Qianming's clothes for the first time. She carefully studied how to insert the needle. She didn't know how to needlework and hadn't planned to sew the dress. She was only thinking about how to get away with it. Now that she knew that the other party was Yi Qianming, how could she still have such thoughts? Try your best to make amends. She hoped that when her identity was exposed, that man would forgive her on account of all the hard work she had put in. Luo Qingtong thought and felt a burst of bitterness in her heart. Chu Xiaofeng and the others saw that she didn't care about Yi Qianxian kidnapping her and even took out Yi Qianxian's clothes to study. Chapter 2504. Yi Qianming didn't leave for too long. He was extremely self-restrained. Previously, it was because Luo Qingtong revealed her ability to see through the surrounding medicinal herbs in public that he couldn't control himself for a while. Later, he completely confirmed Luo Qingtong's identity as a man. Then he thought that Luo Qingtong's ability to see through the medicinal herbs was entirely due to her meticulous observation, which was different from that woman's ability to see through everything. He immediately calmed down. After venting outside, he restrained his aura and returned to the team. Except for Luo Qingtong, Bei Qing, Feng Yu, and others, no one else noticed the strong blood aura lingering around his body. Luo Qingtong looked at the strong blood aura on his body and knew that he went out to vent. This time, it was estimated that many demon plants and magical beasts were unlucky. But this man abused the power in his body like this. Could his strength support it? Could his meridians bear it? Why did the Shifang dragon ring in his hand disappear? What happened during this period of time? Luo Qingtong had a lot of questions to ask Yi Qianming. But because she had decided not to involve Yi Qianming in her grievances, she couldn't ask anything at this time. She could only look at him with a smile and greet him, "Hey, brother, you're back?" She still had the same playful attitude and casual words. Yi Qianming glanced at her and ignored her. He had completely accepted the fact that Luo Qingtong was not Luo Qingtong and was not going to pay attention to her. Even if she gave him the feeling that she was Luo Qingtong, she was not Luo Qingtong. What's more, Yi Qianming's pride did not allow him to find a substitute to replace Luo Qingtong when she was not here. Even if this person was very similar, it was impossible. He ignored Luo Qingtong. After receiving Feng Yu's hint, he said to Chu Xiaofeng and others, "There's not much danger ahead. We can go." Because all the dangers had just been eliminated by him. Everyone followed his words and walked forward. Along the way, they didn't see any magical beasts or demon plants. However, the worst part was that there wasn't even a single spiritual flower or spiritual grass. Could it be that because the team in front of them had passed by, all the spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs had been plucked out? Everyone guessed, but there were no signs of fighting in the surroundings. What the hell? Everyone felt gloomy, especially Chu Xiaofeng. He was still counting on Luo Qingtong's terrifying observation skills to harvest a good harvest in the vicinity. One had to know that getting Luo Qingtong was a huge gain for him. On this abandoned continent, one could only replenish their strength through spiritual flowers and spiritual grasses. According to Chu Xiaofeng's original calculations, it would take a lot of effort for him to obtain enough spiritual flowers and herbs to replenish his energy and bring out a considerable amount of spiritual flowers and herbs at the same time. It could even cause great casualties to the team. After all, in Tianfeng Chu's family, there were many guards like him. Especially those top disciples, there was no need to even mention them, except for Chu Lingfeng, who had rejected the guards. The guards assigned to the others were only stronger than him, and not weaker than him. In this case, it was very difficult for him to stand out. But who told him to get Luo Qingtong now? With the support of this young man, he would definitely get the most spiritual flowers and spiritual grasses. Chu Xiaofeng had already discussed with Luo Qingtong. As long as she found spiritual flowers and spiritual grasses, he would buy them with resources from her. Chapter 2505. Luo Qingtong didn't care. Chu Xiaofeng's proposal was beneficial to her. This abandoned continent was a high-level continent with a vast area. There were so many spirit flowers and spirit grasses that Luo Qingtong couldn't pick them all. She didn't need to refuse Chu Xiaofeng's proposal. This deal was beneficial to her. The resources of the Tianfeng Chu family were very useful to her. Not only would she be able to use them, but her subordinates would also be able to use them when she returned to the true Spill continent. These were cultivation resources that others couldn't even buy with money. Luo Qingtong was still regretting that she had left Tianfeng Inscription City in a hurry and didn't get anything good from Song City. Now that Chu Xiaofeng had delivered himself to her door, she didn't need to reject him. Chu Xiaofeng was doing this in order to befriend Luo Qingtong. This youth had such ability at such a young age. Perhaps he would need her help in the future. Not to mention, these cultivation resources were not worth mentioning compared to the Tianfeng Chu family benefits. As long as he could bring back a large number of spirit flowers and spirit grasses, he would be able to suppress the other Tianfeng Chu family's disciples. This was something that couldn't be compared to. Chu Xiaofeng was very clear about this point. However, they didn't find any traces of spirit flowers or spirit grasses along the way. Chu Xiaofeng's face instantly turned green. They had better not walk into a dead land without any spiritual energy. That would be a trap. After all, this abandoned continent had been abandoned for a long time. Even if the heart of the continent suddenly changed and the heavenly grass was born, not all places on the abandoned continent could benefit from it. There were always dead ends where no spiritual energy or energy of the great Tao could reach. Chu Xiaofeng thought that they had encountered such a place. However, only Luo Qingtong, Feng Yu, and Bei Qing knew what was going on. Oh my God, this wastrel! Luo Qingtong's eyes looked at the dissipating spiritual energy and the power of demon beasts and plants. The corners of her mouth twitched. How is this a dead land? It was clearly the result of a man venting his anger. Should she be glad that no matter how depressed or angry this man was, he didn't do anything to her? Luo Qingtong was embarrassed and unconsciously looked at Yi Qianming. The latter no longer stared at her from time to time and probed her like before. But Luo Qingtong hoped that he would look at her like before. Only then would she be able to get close to him. This man's unapproachable manner was too troublesome. Luo Qingtong dawdled and finally came to Yi Qianming's side. Cough, brother. Luo Qingtong only realized that she still didn't know Yi Qianxian's name. This man was investigating her identity everywhere, but he didn't even mention her name. Even if he said something that was slightly related to his name, he would still be able to recognize him. He was investigating her in the middle of the night without any identification. Furthermore, she was being investigated. It would be strange if she admitted her identity. Luo Qingtong was angry and amused at the same time. But now that she knew Yi Qianxian's identity, it didn't matter if he told her his name or not. It was quite good to call him brother like this. Luo Qingtong thought so, and her lips curled up slightly. She immediately continued to harass Yi Qianxian. Yi Qianxian didn't want to pay attention to her at first. He let her shout, but her voice was too noisy and annoying. He endured and endured, but in the end, he couldn't stand it anymore. What the hell do you want? He looked at the young man in front of him coldly. Chapter 2506. It's about your wife. Hearing Luo Qingtong's words, Yi Qianxian's eyes darkened. My wife. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Luo Qingtong. Yes, he said it. Your wife. You're the one who suspects me to be her. Luo Qingtong pointed at Feng Yu and sold him out without hesitation. Yi Qianxian looked at Feng Yu expressionlessly. Mas, young master. Feng Yu looked at the pair of cold eyes behind her master's mask. She was about to cry because of Luo Qingtong's miraculous move. Why was Luo Shaoqi as unpredictable as the evil doctor? He was clearly trying to explain his master's sudden actions to her. So why did it sound like he had nothing better to do and was gossiping with her? Feng Yu was about to cry because of his master's eyes. Master, I didn't mean to leak it. Fortunately, Yi Qianxian knew his character and knew that he was not a gossipy person. Bei Qing might be tricked by Luo Shaoqi, but it was impossible for Feng Yu. Therefore, after staring at him for a while, she looked away and didn't say anything. Why do you ask about her? Yi Qianxian stared at Luo Qingtong. He had just vented his anger, and now his mood had calmed down. But this time, because of Luo Qingtong's question, it stirred up waves of ripples. She had originally intended to ignore Luo Qingtong, but she still asked this question out of curiosity. Oh, ask what kind of person she is. I can't believe you care about me so much. I am a man. How can you mistake me for her? Are we really that alike? Luo Qingtong asked with interest. She just wanted to find a topic to get close to Yi Qianxian. But given the man's unapproachable aura, if it was not a topic he was interested in, he would never talk to her. Therefore, Luo Qingtong used her identity as an opening remark. However, at this moment, her interest was piqued. She also wanted to know why this person was so obsessed with her. He was a man now, and there was a huge birthmark on his face. His appearance and gender had changed. Why did he think that she was Luo Qingtong? And he checked her again and again. Luo Qingtong's face was full of excitement. Yi Qianren looked at the excited expression on her face and the bright light in her eyes. She unconsciously closed her eyes and looked away. Even her curious expression made him feel that it was so similar. But no matter how similar it was not her. Thinking of the scene he saw by the river before, Yi Qianxian's eyes turned cold. My wife has a peerless appearance, unparalleled beauty, and is the most cunning and domineering. The reason why I mistook you for her is because your name and ability are similar to hers. It has nothing to do with you. She was a man. She could not be Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong did not know whether to be angry or laugh at Yi Qianxian's words. This man, she gritted her teeth. Wasn't he telling her not to think too highly of herself, and that his wife was not similar to her at all? It really made her want to hit him. But thinking that the wife he was praising was her, Luo Qingtong felt sweet in her heart. This man was too much. He had always been stingy with his sweet words to her, but he said them so smoothly to others. Chapter 25:07. Oh, so that's how it is. Luo Qingtong said with a smile. I thought your wife looked very similar to me. That's why you kept mistaking me for someone else. Since we've cleared up the misunderstanding, then don't keep me at arm's length. If there's any danger later, you have to protect me well. After all, no matter how different her wife and I are, at least in terms of ability, we're still a little similar. How about this? I'll provide you with spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs for free, and you protect me. Luo Qingtong looked at Yi Qianming, who looked at her coldly. You don't lack protection. She was now in high demand in Chu Xiaofeng's eyes. The other people in Mercenary City would also protect her, so she wouldn't encounter too much danger here. Nonsense. Luo Qingtong heard his words and cursed in her heart. Of course, I don't lack protection. But I don't lack protection. What's more, the spiritual energy in this abandoned continent was completely useless. Luo Qingtong didn't know if Yi Qianming and the others came here for her or the Tianluo grass. But since Yi Qianming came to check her identity in the middle of the night and found out that she was a man, she guessed that they should be here for the Tianluo grass. Otherwise, they would have given up and left at that time. Luo Qingtong thought about it and felt quite lucky. Tianfeng Chu's mission came at the right time. Otherwise, Yi Qianming and the others would have left long ago. How would she know their identity? Not only that, Yi Qianming left True Spill Continent and hid from his enemies. When she left Tianfeng region in the future, they would really miss each other. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong naturally wanted to tie Yi Qianming and the others to her side. She just clarified her identity as a woman by the river. Yi Qianming could see clearly that he would never pester her again, and he came for the Tianluo grass. Luo Qingtong thought about it, and was still worried that Yi Qianming and the others would leave. After all, with their strength, there was no need for them to follow Chu Xiaofeng and the others. After coming here, they would definitely leave immediately. The reason why they didn't leave before was most likely because they still doubted her identity. However, this would remove all his suspicions, so why would he stay? Luo Qingtong was worried about his health. At the same time, she finally knew that he was her man. How could she let him go? Of course, he had to think a way to make him stay. Luo Qingtong thought and suddenly sighed. AI, even if that's the case, who doesn't leave a few more paths for themselves? Look at my small and frail body. If Chu Xiaofeng goes back on his word, the other mercenaries may not be able to protect me. What's more, this is Tianfeng Chu family's territory. Once we're outside, what if my secret is accidentally leaked and the Tianfeng Chu family wants to take advantage of it? At that time, won't I be captured by them and imprisoned day and night just to help them identify those medicinal herbs and tools? Luo Qingtong exaggerated the story. In fact, since she dared to expose herself, she wasn't afraid that the Tianfeng Chu family would covet her. She naturally had a way to escape, but she couldn't say that in front of Yi Qianming. She had to make it sound as miserable as possible. Otherwise, how could she blame them? Sure enough, after hearing her words, Yi Qianming fell silent. After a while, he said coldly, "Then it doesn't have to be us." Yi Qianming indeed had the intention to leave. Chapter 2508. Most importantly, he didn't want to see Luo Qingtong again. He didn't want her to disturb his mood. He was just thinking about leaving, but he didn't expect Luo Qingtong to make such a request. The words spoken by the other party caused his heart to skip a beat, because Luo Qingtong once said the same thing. When she was in the true Spill continent, she said that once her ability was exposed, she would get into endless trouble. Although Luo Xiaoqi's ability was not as good as hers, if the Tianfeng Chu family or the Flying Star Lin family really had evil intentions, she really couldn't escape. Thinking of this, Yi Qianming felt uncomfortable. Even if he knew that Luo Xiaoqi was not Luo Qingtong, he didn't need to care about her. But when he thought that she might be imprisoned and oppressed by others, he couldn't help but feel a burst of anger in his heart. It was probably because Luo Xiaoqi's ability was similar to Luo Qingtong's. But even if she had such concerns, why did she choose them? Wasn't she afraid that they would sell her out? Yi Qianming looked at Luo Qingtong coldly. The latter had already thought of an excuse and immediately said, "Because only you are worthy of my trust. You see, you are outsiders. You don't have to be afraid of the Tianfeng Chu family and can easily leave. Most importantly, your wife's ability is similar to mine or even more powerful than mine. In this case, why do you still need to covet my ability? So of course I choose you." When Luo Qingtong said this, Yi Qianming had to admit that she was right. In this case, they would stay first. Enough spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs were indeed beneficial for them to compete for the Tianluo grass later. Although Yi Qianming and the others were strong, but at the same time, it consumed a lot of energy to attack. If Luo Xiaoqi could provide them with enough spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs, it would indeed save them a lot of trouble. Of course, the most important reason was that Yi Qianming subconsciously didn't want anything to happen to Luo Qingtong. After hearing her frightening words, he gave up on the idea of leaving. Seeing that Yi Qianming didn't speak, Luo Qingtong suddenly smiled, knowing that she had succeeded. This man shouldn't be leaving. The next step would be to gather as many spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs as possible for them, in case this man did not have enough power in his body. It was a pity that she couldn't check his body right now. Otherwise, she could have secretly checked his body. However, it was fine. She would think of another way on the way. Anyway, there was plenty of time. As long as he was by her side, there was no need to be afraid that he couldn't think of a way. However, her current strength was still a little low. It would be best for her to show Yi Qianxian when she was stronger. Thinking of this, Luo Qingtong frowned. She now knew that Yi Qianxian was after the Tianluo grass. If that was the case, she probably couldn't take it anymore. He had to start from other areas to see if he could increase his strength. Fortunately, there were many spirit flowers and spirit herbs on this abandoned continent. Apart from being able to replenish one's energy, they could also increase one's strength. It was just that her most important obstacle was breaking through the barrier of the venerable realm, nothing else. It was a pity that Hum had returned to the 9 stories exquisite pagoda and said that it wanted to recuperate and restore its strength, so as not to be weak all the time. Otherwise, she could ask it. Luo Qingtong thought about these things. Soon, the group walked past the area where Yi Qianxian was wreaking havoc. Chapter 2509. He was really afraid that they would go to the wrong place. If they really went to a place where the spirit chi was cut off, where even the great Dao Qi nurtured by the Tianluo grass did not visit, they would be in trouble. They would have to go back and find another direction. He did not know how much time they would waste. The Tianluo grass on this abandoned continent was nurtured in the heart of the continent. The disciples of the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan did not know the exact location. This was because the heart of the continent was located in a different place on each continent. Not only that, but it would also constantly move around the continent as time passed. The Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan had discovered the existence of the Tianluo grass. However, because the two clans kept each other in check, no one was able to obtain the Tianluo grass. By the time they sent their disciples here, the location of the heart of the continent would have changed. They had to continue searching in this abandoned continent. At the same time, this was also a training for the disciples of the clans. However, the Flying Star Lian clan and the Tianfeng Chu clan would not let their disciples wander aimlessly in this abandoned continent. Although they had sealed off the news on this abandoned continent, it did not mean that they could completely hide the truth from masses. The longer they delayed, the more disadvantageous it would be for them. Therefore, they had calculated the time and brought their disciples here this time. The heart of the continent would erupt with a spirit qi tide every year. At that time, it would reveal its location. This time, the Tianfeng Chu clan and the Flying Star Lian clan had sent their disciples here just in the vicinity of this time. It was estimated that in a few days, the spirit qi tide would erupt. At that time, the heart of the continent would be revealed. The Tianluo grass would also be revealed. Therefore, Chu Xiaofeng did not want to waste too much time. Fortunately, this proved that the direction they were heading in was not a dead end. He immediately felt relieved and quickly threw himself into the battle against the demonic beasts and monster plants. The living creatures on this abandoned continent were very strange. Because all the humans had left, the demonic beasts and monster plants that remained did not have the ability to survive. They could only take root here. However, in order to adapt to life here, they had completely mutated. They fed on the decaying spirit qi and carried corrosive spirit qi all over their bodies. As soon as the spirit qi came into contact with the attacks of Chu Xiaofeng and the others, it would be eliminated and weakened. Even if Chu Xiaofeng was at the same level of strength, he would be suppressed to less than half of his strength. Not only that, but their spiritual energy consumption was also not on the same level as these magical beasts and demonic plants. The more they used it, the less energy they had. Those demonic beasts and demonic plants were completely different. They could absorb the decaying spirit qi in the air to replenish themselves, so their strength was not affected at all. For a moment, Chu Xiaofeng and the others were in a sorry state. Only now did they realize how rare it was for them to walk through such a safe journey. Then how did it happen? It could actually make all the demonic beasts and plants disappear. Even the spirit flowers and spirit herbs were gone. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't figure it out. None of them thought of Yi Qianxian. After all, it was too frightening. He cleared a path without any danger by himself. That was simply a fantasy story. None of them even thought of that. Chapter 25:10. Yi Qianxian and the others stood beside her, not intending to make a move. But their reason was to protect Luo Qintong. Chu Xiaofeng and the others had no opinion. Only Luo Qintong knew that Yi Qianxian and the others actually disdained to make a move. Especially Yi Qianxian. If he made a move, the surrounding magical beasts and monster plants would all be gone. Luo Qintong also agreed that Yi Qianxian and the others should not make a move. First, Yi Qianxian's meridians had problems. If they cannot make a move, then they should not make a move. After all, this was not a low-level continent like the True Spill continent. These magical beasts and monster plants were not easy to deal with. If they made a move too much, what would they do if Yi Qianxian's meridians were injured? Second, these magical beasts and monster plants were very suitable for gaining experience. If they were all killed by Yi Qianxian and the others, Luo Qintong and the others would not be able to gain experience. Therefore, she was inclined to not let Yi Qianxian and the others make a move. If they made a move, she would also stop them. Fortunately, the latter and the others did not have the idea of exposing their strength. When Chu Xiaofeng and the others were forced to retreat by the magical beasts and monster plants in front of them, Luo Qingtong had already investigated the nearby terrain. She already had a way to deal with it. Everything had its nemesis, especially these magical beasts and monster plants. Because they lived in the same place for a long time, their natural enemies were almost always nearby. Luo Qingtong's eyes scanned the area and soon found some useful things in the surroundings. Big Brother Gu, you guys retreat, except for the rest of the Red Flame Mercenary Corps spread out to the side. Do you see that small slope? Run over there, then lead those magical beasts and monster plants there. Luo Qingtong and the others encountered a group of magical beasts and monster plants. These magical beasts and monster plants each guarded a piece of spiritual grass behind them. It seemed that there were about a dozen of them. At this moment, under Luo Qingtong's command, the group of mercenaries only stared blankly for a moment before running towards the hollow she mentioned. They had long been used to listening to Luo Qingtong. After all, in Mercenary City, Luo Qingtong's words were always accurate. It didn't matter if it was a mission plan or something else. Chu Xiaofeng, on the other hand, stood there in a daze. He was originally prepared to rush over with Gu Yifeng and the others. However, Gu Yifeng and the others listened to Luo Qingtong's words and retreated. He faced the demonic beasts and monster plants alone and cursed in his heart. These people were simply crazy. Who was the employer here? If it was before he had seen Luo Qingtong's ability, he would have cursed and even used the agreement to punish Gu Yifeng and the others. But at this moment, she knew that Luo Qingtong would not speak carelessly. He suppressed his temper and didn't say anything. But shouldn't he at least give him some orders? How could she forget about him alone? Luo Xiaoqi, you can't be so biased, right? Did she want him to fight against these magical beasts and monster plants alone? Chu Xiaofeng's face turned green. Just as he was about to run with Gu Yifeng and the others, Luo Qingtong's voice rang in his ears at this moment. Don't move. Don't move your ass. Those magical beasts and monster plants were about to rush over. If he went against them like this, he would definitely die without a complete corpse. Chu Xiaofeng's face didn't even turn green. It was completely blue, okay? Chapter 25:11. Damn it, let's fight. He gritted his teeth fiercely and stood there motionless. He was going to bet. He was going to bet that Luo Xiaoqi wouldn't kill him. When Luo Qingtong spoke, seeing that Chu Xiaofeng was about to run, Yi Qianxian suddenly moved his hands in his sleeves to stop him. Yi Qianxian didn't know why he did this. When Luo Xiaoqi spoke, he naturally wanted to cooperate with her actions. Just like in the past, he and Luo Qingtong cooperated with each other. But the one standing in front of him now was not Luo Qingtong, but Luo Xiaoqi. Yi Qianming's eyes were complicated. He looked at Chu Xiaofeng, who had already stood in front of him, and withdrew the power lingering around his fingertips. But his heart couldn't calm down. Luo Qingtong didn't know this at all. Her eyes were fixed on Chu Xiaofeng. 1, 2, 3. Luo Qingtong counted silently in her heart. Seeing that those magical beasts and demon plants were about to collide with Chu Xiaofeng, she said in a deep voice, Brother Gu, grab the green grass next to you, crush it into liquid, and splash it. As her voice sounded, Gu Yifeng and the others pulled up the grass around them in an instant. These grass were very inconspicuous, almost ankle-high and green all over, the kind that was a little scary. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong's reminder, they might not have noticed it, because this grass was neither a spiritual herb nor a demon plant. In their eyes, it was useless. But since Luo Qingtong had spoken, everyone did as she said. They uprooted the green grass and crushed them into juice. Then, they raised their hands and scattered the juice. Bang! A large amount of green liquid splashed on Chu Xiaofeng, instantly turning him into a green man. the kind that was green from head to toe. Above his head, there was a green grass that was swaying in the wind, stretching its body and swaying back and forth above his head. Cough, cough, sorry, it was a mistake. Hujan scratched his head in embarrassment. He was too nervous just now, so he didn't even crush the grass completely before throwing it out. He missed a blade of grass. Everyone looked at him and wanted to laugh, but couldn't. On the other side, Chu Xiaofeng resisted the urge to curse. He didn't have time to raise his hand and pull down the grass on his head before those magical beasts and demon plants arrived. Rumble. Those magical beasts were like thousands of galloping horses as they charged towards him. Meanwhile, those monster plants were waving their huge and thick branches. They took bold steps and rumbled like a bulldozer as they charged towards him. Chu Xiaofeng closed his eyes. However, as soon as those magical beasts and demon plants approached him, they let out mournful cries. In an instant, the demonic beasts and demonic plants that were about to collide with him all screeched sharply and came to a sudden halt. Their attacks and collisions were all deflected to one side. Not only that, but it was also as if it had lost its mind as it madly screamed and attacked. Let's attack. Force them to the place where the small depression is. Luo Qingtong's voice came at this time. Immediately, the other 3 mercenary corps, who were stunned by the scene at the depression, took action and drove the group of magical beasts and demon plants over. Gu Yifeng and the others were about to go over to help, but they found that as soon as they went over, those magical beasts and demon plants became even crazier. They even vaguely looked like they were going to escape at all costs. They had no choice but to stand in place and watch the 3 mercenary corps drive all those magical beasts and demon plants to the depression and kill them. The whole process took less than 15 minutes. Chapter 25:12. Everyone was dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Xiaoqi, how did you do it? Chu Xiaofeng cleaned himself up and walked over. He was going to die. What the hell was this green juice? Why couldn't he get rid of it? Chu Xiaofeng's face turned green, and he walked over with a dirty head. Luo Qingtong looked at his embarrassed appearance and smiled, then raised her hand and pointed to a place not far away and said, "Here, use that soil to wipe it, and it will be wiped off." Chu Xiaofeng was happy to hear that, but when he looked back, his face darkened. Not for anything else, but the mucus and dirt left by those magical beasts and monster plants were everywhere on the soil. "Oh my God, you want to use that to wipe it?" With a dirty face, Chu Xiaofeng asked Luo Qingtong 3 times in a row and got the same answer, so he could only run over. When Gu Yifeng and others saw this scene, they immediately rejoiced. They were not the ones who were used as fish hooks by Luo Qingtong to hang those magical beasts and monster plants. But how did Luo Qingtong do it? How did she know that the juice of those grasses could restrain those magical beasts and monster plants? Luo Qingtong looked at the doubts on their faces and didn't keep them in suspense. She answered them with a chuckle. "Didn't you notice? These magical beasts and monster plants have lived here for so long, guarding the spiritual grasses behind them. The weeds nearby have almost been ruined by them. But these green grasses are close to them, so how can they be spared? Also, when you were fighting with them just now, someone accidentally stepped back and stepped on those weeds, and his feet were stained with the juice. Those magical beasts and monster plants suddenly stopped attacking him and turned to other people. And when he walked over, they even avoided him in disgust." Luo Qingtong pointed to a person in the Red Flame mercenary group. The latter recalled in amazement and found that it seemed to be true. He had been rushing in front and following the leader. But even Hu Zhan was besieged in the back. He seemed to be fine. He thought it was just luck. It seemed that it was because of the liquid, but Luo Xiaoqi actually noticed such a small thing. There were so many of them. How sharp were her eyes? Everyone's faces were filled with admiration. Yi Qianming listened to the explanation of Luo Qingtong and the people of the Red Flame mercenary group and suddenly felt dispirited. Luo Xiaoqi and Luo Qingtong's abilities were indeed somewhat similar, but Luo Xiaoqi's ability could be seen by anyone who had eyes and was willing to observe carefully. It was just that the average person didn't have her observational skills. However, Qing Tong's ability was different. It was unique in this world. Yi Qianming pursed his lips and felt that there was something wrong with him. He had already confirmed that Luo Qingtong was not Luo Qingtong. Why did he keep having this misconception? What was going on? Yi Qianming pursed his lips. Bei Qing and Feng Yu were also surprised by Luo Shaoqi's ability. Who would have thought that there was someone in this world who could match the evil doctor's abilities? Although the evil doctor's ability was obviously stronger. But this Luo Shaoqi's ability was obviously more practical. They looked at the place where Luo Qingtong was and could understand why Yi Qianming always mistook Luo Shaoqi for Luo Qingtong. They were too similar, especially the aura of strategizing and the means and methods of the layout. Everyone shook their heads. Chapter 25:13. The group of people continued to move forward. They had already picked the spiritual herbs guarded by the magical beasts and plants. Everyone found these spiritual herbs together, so they were divided equally. With Luo Qingtong around, Chu Xiaofeng was not stingy. There were a lot of spiritual herbs just now. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong, they might have lost some. Therefore, each family took out a spiritual herb and gave it to Luo Qingtong. Yi Qianming and the others also got a spiritual herb because they were guarding Luo Qingtong. Luo Qingtong received these spiritual herbs excitedly. Then before Chu Xiaofeng could speak, she raised her hand and stuffed these spiritual herbs in her hand to Yi Qianming. Here, your protection fee. Actually, it was her compensation and alimony. Luo Qingtong planned seriously. If she continued to support Yi Qianming like this, when she left here, would this man forgive her for not admitting her identity? Luo Qingtong thought about it over and over again, and then tragically realized that it seemed impossible. This man was not so easy to bribe. Toothache. Luo Qingtong was gloomily calculating. Yi Qianming looked at the pile of spiritual herbs in his arms and inexplicably couldn't come back to his senses. Why did he feel that there was something wrong with the current situation? It's too much. His voice was cold, and he took back some of the spiritual herbs in his hand and gave some to Luo Qingtong. The other party asked them to protect her and give them spiritual herbs for free. But they clearly didn't protect her just now, because Luo Qingtong was not in danger. He could take some, but not all. Yes. Chu Xiaofeng nodded desperately. He was still hoping to exchange some from Luo Qingtong. This guy should at least leave some for him. What's right? Luo Qingtong glared at him, then looked at Yi Qianming and said, Anyway, when we are in danger, I will still give you these spiritual herbs. Just take it. This is the deal we agreed on. Why was this man so dawdling? She gave it to him, and he used it. He even rejected the things that were sent to his door. If he didn't save some to replenish his strength in the future, what would he do if he encountered danger? Luo Qingtong was not worried that she would run out of spiritual flowers and spiritual grasses. She could take them at any time, but Yi Qianming and the others couldn't. She had to prepare more. Yi Qianming was caught off guard and was once again stuffed by her. The veins on his forehead twitched. Forget it, I'll just keep it. It's just some spiritual herbs. When he left the abandoned continent in the future, he would ask the people from the Underworld Palace to send the corresponding resources to the Red Flame mercenary group. Yi Qianming never took advantage of others. He would just treat the extra spiritual herbs as if he had bought them from Luo Shaoqi, like Chu Xiaofeng did. Thinking of this, he gave these spiritual herbs to Feng Yu and told him to keep them well. The group continued to move forward. Originally, Chu Xiaofeng was a little depressed that he didn't get those spiritual herbs from Luo Qingtong's hands. As a result, along the way, Luo Qingtong found countless spiritual herbs. It couldn't even be described as plucking feathers from geese. Almost everywhere they went, Luo Qingtong could predict what spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs would be in advance and let Chu Xiaofeng and the others pick them. When encountering magical beasts and demon plants, Chu Xiaofeng and the others would deal with them alone or in small numbers. When encountering more magical beasts and demon plants, Luo Qingtong's observation skills came in handy. She was always able to meticulously discover every single flaw in the battlefield. Chapter 25:14. With her around, Chu Xiaofeng and the others were no longer restrained when facing those magical beasts and monster plants. And the advantage of those magical beasts and monster plants was not as strong as before. When they adapted to the attacks of these magical beasts and monster plants, the following battles would be easier. Along the way, the group completely uprooted the mountains and turned over the trees. There was no spiritual flower or spiritual grass that could escape their search. Under such circumstances, Chu Xiaofeng didn't care that Luo Qingtong gave her spiritual flowers and spiritual grass to Yi Qianming and the others. After all, Luo Qingtong needed protection. Yi Qianming and the others deserved to get those spiritual flowers and spiritual grass. And Chu Xiaofeng didn't expect that Luo Qingtong's ability was so powerful that she could lead them to find so many spiritual flowers and spiritual grass. Although Luo Qingtong didn't give him those spiritual flowers and spiritual grass, he still gave her the corresponding resources according to the frequency that Luo Qingtong found those spiritual flowers and spiritual grass. After all, the frequency that Luo Qingtong found those spiritual flowers and spiritual grass was too high. If it weren't for Luo Qingtong, they wouldn't have been able to get so many spiritual flowers and spiritual grass. In fact, if it weren't for Luo Qingtong's lack of strength, those spiritual flowers and spiritual grass she found should have been hers. Thinking so, Chu Xiaofeng was willing to give these resources. And because Yi Qianming and the others had the spiritual flowers and spiritual grass that Luo Qingtong gave them, they didn't have to fight along the way but still got a lot of harvest. Beiqing, Feng Yu, and the others calculated and found that even if they left and searched on their own, the spiritual flowers and spiritual grass they got would not be as much as what Luo Qingtong gave them. And this was under the condition that they were strong and not afraid of those magical beasts and monster plants. The young man's ability was too powerful. In this abandoned continent, he was simply like a fish in water. And what made Beiqing, Feng Yu, and the others even more embarrassed was that they were inexplicably living off of a woman. They didn't do anything and got a lot of things. Well, if not for the previous battle where a monster plant suddenly went berserk and almost kidnapped Luo Xiaoqi and was then killed by them, they really could be considered to have done nothing. Everyone's hearts were filled with a sense of helplessness. They felt like they had been taken care of by someone. At this moment, the sky ahead had already turned dark. Night fell. At night, the demonic beasts and demonic plants would become even more violent. Moreover, many of those spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs would also hide at night. There was no need to rush at night. Chu Xiaofeng and the others had already gained a lot during the day. Everyone was very tired now. Seeing that the sky had darkened, they stopped and began to set up camp. Luo Qingtong chose a good place for everyone to rest. The terrain there was dangerous, easy to defend, and hard to attack, so there was no fear of being ambushed at night. In addition, Luo Qingtong also used the corpses of the magical beasts and demonic plants to mix with the weeds to make a powder that could cover everyone's scent and sprinkled it around the camp. This powder could prevent most of the magical beasts and demonic plants from coming to the door. At the same time, it could also prevent snakes, insects, rats, and ants. After doing this, Luo Qingtong got into her tent. However, as soon as she got into the tent, she saw a figure sitting in her tent. Oh my God! The moment she saw this figure, Luo Qingtong's eyes widened and the corners of her mouth twitched violently. How could she have forgotten about this person? It's over, it's over. Luo Qingtong's face was full of grief. Chapter 25:15. Xiaoqi, you're back? Yu Xian's voice was gentle, but Luo Qingtong's lips twitched even more when she heard it. Cough. Yu Xian, why are you in my tent? As she asked, the villain in her heart was rolling on the ground and wailing. This was troublesome. How could she forget Yu Xian? If she had known that she would meet Yi Qianming, she would have sent Yu Xian away early. How was she going to explain to Yi Qianming that she had taken in a boy toy when she was pretending to be Luo Shaoqi? Luo Qingtong's villain scratched the wall desperately. She could already imagine how angry Yi Qianming would be when he knew her identity in the future. Damn. Fortunately, she had the foresight not to expose her identity to that man immediately. Otherwise, what would happen? It would definitely be a mess soon. However, she was forced to do it. She didn't want to take in a boy toy at all. Luo Qingtong had a headache, thinking about how to explain it to Yi Qianming in the future. Yu Mingqian looked at her, and his eyes flashed slightly. He lowered his head and said softly, Shaoqi, I'm here to sleep with you. You know, I can't bear to be with them. Shaoqi, just think of it as helping me, okay? Yu Mingqian's eyes were strange, but his face was full of unspeakable fear and confusion. His words were full of helplessness, as if only Luo Qingtong could help him. In fact, this was the case. Yu Mingqian, who was now playing the role of Yu Xian, was a person who was once imprisoned as a boy toy. He was very dependent on Luo Qingtong, who saved him. Except for her, no one else could get close to him. Not to mention that because of his past trauma, he couldn't get close to any man at all. In the entire Red Flame mercenary group, except for Luo Qingtong, only Ouyang Yingyu could be close to him. But Ouyang Yingyu would become a different person at night, and he couldn't get close to her at all. Even the people in the Red Flame mercenary group couldn't get close to her. Therefore, no matter how he thought about it, Yu Mingqian could only share a tent with Luo Qingtong. This was also the reason why he was here. If she didn't know that Yi Qianming was the white J-masked man, perhaps Luo Qingtong wouldn't care that Yu Mingqian lived here. After all, it was normal for the mercenaries to sleep together when they were sleeping outside. But this was different. Damn, Yi Qianming was in this group. She was living with a boy toy, and the other party was obviously interested in her and admired her very much. Luo Qingtong trembled as she thought about it. She felt that if Yi Qianming found out about this, the consequences would be very, very serious. Most importantly, Luo Qingtong didn't want to hurt Yi Qianming's heart. That man valued her so much that she lived with another man right in front of him. Even if Luo Qingtong had never been in a relationship and had no experience in love, she would not do such a stupid thing. Putting herself in his shoes, even if she had no relationship with Yu Xian and only had the relationship of a savior, in Yi Qianming's eyes, it was different. Thinking about it, if she saw Yi Qianming living with a woman, even if the other party said that they had nothing to do with each other, would she tolerate it? Luo Qingtong couldn't accept it just thinking about it, let alone Yi Qianming. They both had the same pride and couldn't tolerate sand in their eyes. She couldn't tolerate it. So why should Yi Qianming tolerate it? But it was already late at night. It was too late to build another tent. And if they made too much noise, it would inevitably attract the magical beasts and plants that were active at night. Chapter 25:16. Aya. She was really stupid. If Yu Xian came to stay with her, she could have stayed with Yi Qianming. Speaking of which, Yu Xian also gave her a very good reason to get close to Yi Qianming. Why didn't she think of staying with him? Yi Qianxian and the others were her higher bodyguards. These bodyguards naturally included her safety at night. Luo Qingtong thought of this, and her face instantly lit up with joy. She had already thought of what to do. Okay, she agreed readily. Yu Xian, you can stay here. It's okay, Luo Qingtong said and went out happily. Yu Mingqian looked at her back and was stunned. Then he frowned and asked, Little Seven, where are you going? Why was this a little different from what he thought? Since the other party allowed him to stay here, shouldn't she also stay here to rest? Yu Mingqian looked at the night outside. In this case, it was impossible to build another tent outside. Where was Luo Qingtong going? I naturally have a place to go. It's okay, you can have a good rest. Luo Qingtong's words were filled with joy. In the end, She didn't forget to comfort Yu Mingxian. "Oh, by the way, you don't have to worry about staying here. I will let them guard here and not let anyone come in to disturb your rest. You also don't have to be afraid that someone will come in the middle of the night and scare you," Luo Qingtong said and immediately left happily. Only Yu Mingxian was left sitting in the same place, looking at her disappearing figure with a strange look. Yu Mingxian's face was ugly. This time, he came to Luo Qingtong's tent to have a chance to silently expose the other party's identity. In this way, he didn't need to alarm the white jade-masked man. Secondly, he saw through Luo Qingtong's secret, and he promised to keep it a secret for her. In this way, the other party would trust him very much and even rely on him. In this way, he could slowly and easily extract the information he wanted from her mouth. After all, in this world, what could bring the trust between two people better than having one of them keep a secret? This kind of spiritual closeness would definitely make the other party lower their guard against him. However, Luo Qingtong didn't even give him this opportunity. Yu Mingxian's eyes were cold. She raised her hand and grabbed the handle of the rattan chair she was sitting on. She almost lost control of her temper and shattered the rattan chair into pieces. At this time, Luo Qingtong hugged her bedding and ran to Yi Qianxian's tent. Just like her, Yi Qianxian had a tent to himself. Luo Qingtong stuck her head out and looked around. Yi Qianxian sat in the tent and seemed to feel something. He immediately looked in her direction and coldly shouted, "Who is it?" He raised his hand and prepared to send out a gust of wind. But at this time, Luo Qingtong walked in with a smile while hugging a bedding. "It's me, brother." Luo Qingtong's last call was unusually loud. She ran in front of Yi Qianxian with a smile and put the bedding in her hands on the bed next to Yi Qianxian. Then she said to him with a smile, "How is it? Are you surprised to see me?" Yi Qianxian didn't look at her. He just stared at the bedding she put on his bed and coldly said, "What do you mean by this? What do you mean?" Chapter 25:17. She blinked her eyes and looked at Yi Qianxian with an expression that said, "Why are you so strange?" She said, "Of course I'm sleeping here. Don't tell me you've forgotten our previous agreement. What agreement do we have?" Yi Qianxian looked at the self-righteous young man in front of him and felt the blue veins on his forehead throbbing violently. Not only was this Luo Xiaoqi's ability and name very similar to Luo Qingtong's, but even her unreasonable personality was also very similar to Luo Qingtong's. Everything she did was unexpected. It was impossible to figure out. Yi Qianren didn't expect that she would bring a blanket over and want to sleep with her. She even said that it was an agreement between her and him. Why didn't he know that he had such an agreement with her before? Did he have amnesia at such a young age? His heavenly pulse body had a problem with his meridians, not his brain. Yi Qianxian was about to throw Luo Qingtong's quilt away with a poker face, but Luo Qingtong held him down. She pressed her whole body on the quilt and said to Yi Qianxian pitifully, "Brother, please take pity on me. My tent has been slept in by someone else. If you kick me out, I can only sleep outside in the wilderness. Are you willing to do that?" Luo Qingtong swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She looked at Yi Qianxian with a pitiful face and said, "Brother, don't forget that you promised to protect me. What if I sleep outside and something happens to me? You can't just take advantage of me and not admit it." Since he took her protection fee, he was her man. Of course, he was her man even if he didn't take her. But didn't she need a legitimate reason now? Yi Qianxian looked at the shameless young man in front of him, and the blue veins on his forehead throbbed even more violently. "Who is sleeping in your tent?" His voice was cold. The Red Flame mercenary group cherished Luo Xiaoqi very much, so they built a tent for her alone. No one would snatch it from her, not to mention the other mercenary groups, and Chu Xiaofeng. Yi Qianxian didn't quite believe Luo Qingtong's words. The other party was as cunning as that woman. Yi Qianxian did not want to get close to him at all. He had already been influenced enough by the other party, and he didn't want to continue like this. "Ahem, Yu Xian, a pet boy that I saved. Luo Qingtong thought that since she was going to die sooner or later, she might as well confess as soon as possible. This way, when her identity was exposed and this man asked her again, she could use the fact that she had already confessed to him. Aya, she really is a genius. This was simply perfect. As for Yi Qianxian, after hearing her words, his hands suddenly tightened and he grabbed her arm. Pet boy. His eyes narrowed slightly, and the anger within them seemed to be about to pounce out from behind the white jade mask. You even brought a pet boy here. You really know how to enjoy life. Yi Qianxian's voice was cold and filled with anger. He didn't know where this anger came from, but it couldn't be extinguished no matter how hard he tried. In that case, why are you still here? Get out of here, he said, and was about to throw Luo Qingtong out. Chapter 25:18. That's not my boy toy. It's me who saved him. Damn, didn't this man listen to the main point when he was angry? Luo Qingtong was glad that it was Luo Xiaoqi who was facing him. If it was Luo Qingtong, she would really be in big trouble. She wouldn't be able to clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. He was frightened and couldn't stay with those mercenaries, so he went to my tent. Brother, please take me in. Luo Qingtong hugged Yi Qianming's waist so tightly that he couldn't pull her away. Yi Qianming's eyes were cold. It took him a lot of effort to suppress the force that wanted to push her away subconsciously. He put his hand on Luo Qingtong's body, but for some reason, he just couldn't do it. Otherwise, Luo Qingtong's action of hugging him was enough to be shocked to death by the defensive force in his body, not to mention being able to entangle him so tightly. Let go. His voice was cold, and he squeezed out 2 words from between his teeth. No. What a joke. She would be thrown out as soon as she let go. Luo Qingtong made up her mind not to go back to her tent. If she didn't stay with Yi Qianming, she could only sleep in the wilderness. She wouldn't do it even if she was beaten to death. Brother, look at how talented you are. You have both integrity and talent, and your martial arts are excellent. You definitely won't let a weak young man like me live in the open without anyone to depend on, right? What's more, I gave you so many spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs today. Since you took the money, you have to guarantee my safety. As a protector, you have to be competent. Brother, you are a man of your words. You will never break your promise, right? Luo Qingtong's words were endless. The blue veins on Yi Qianming's forehead kept throbbing, and he raised his hand to pull her hand. If one hand couldn't do it, then 2. Seeing that she was about to be pulled away from Yi Qianxian and thrown out, Luo Qingtong hurriedly shouted, all right. I'm not sleeping in the same bed as you. I'll sleep on the floor, right? If I continue to reject you, I will be unreasonable and inhumane. Luo Qingtong seriously considered if Yi Qianxian really didn't agree. Should she try to make a scene or something? In any case, her image was like floating clouds to her. Being able to stay at Yi Qianxian's place was the most important thing. Outside, Beiqing, Feng Yu, and the others rushed over when they heard the commotion coming from their master's tent. However, looking at the scene in front of them, they didn't know whether they should go up to help or not. What was going on between Luo Xiaoqi and his master? They looked at Luo Qingtong desperately clinging to Yi Qianxian like a koala bear, and her master was holding back her temper and pulling her away. It had been a long time since her master was so easy to talk to. Beiqing and Feng Yu looked at Yi Qianxian at this moment and inexplicably felt like time had turned back. They saw the Yi Qianxian who was always angered by Luo Qingtong, but was reluctant to do anything to her. The evil doctor really had a great influence on their master. Even for such a young man, their master could hold back his temper and not directly throw him out with serious injuries. Cough. Feng Yu looked at the 2 people in front of her and coughed softly. Master Luo Xiaoqi, if you have nowhere to go, you can come to our tent for the night. Their tent was not as crowded as the other mercenary groups. It was a piece of cake to make room for Luo Qingtong. Chapter 25:19. No, I won't go. Their voices sounded almost at the same time. In an instant, Bei Qing and Feng Yu were dumbfounded. They looked at their master and then at Luo Qingtong, not knowing what to say. It was okay if Luo Xiaoqi didn't go. After all, their master had such a spacious place. If she didn't live with their master, it would be stupid of her to share a tent with them. But what was wrong with their master? Didn't he hate Luo Xiaoqi? Was he going to throw her out? Why did he change his mind? Feng Yu spoke up to help her master out of this predicament. But how was her master going to tear down her stage? Yi Qianxian regretted it as soon as he spoke. He didn't know what was wrong with him. He didn't want to care about Luo Xiaoqi and didn't want her to live in his tent. But when he thought that she would go to Bei Qing and Feng Yu's tent, sleep on the same bed with them, and even have sex with them in the middle of the night, his face turned livid. Before he could come back to his senses, he had already roared out the word no. Damn it! Yi Qianxian's face turned ugly, but Luo Qingtong jumped up with joy. Huh, you said yes. Did you hear that? Your master said yes. Hurry up, go and make a wooden bed for me. Luo Qingtong's face was full of joy. For Bei Qing and Feng Yu, it was very easy to make a rattan chair and a wooden bed with local materials. It didn't take much effort. But their master, they looked at their master. Yi Qianxian's face hidden behind the white jade mask was tense, and his thin lips were almost pressed into a line. However, he couldn't let Yi Qianren go back on her words. He couldn't do it. What's more, this young man and Luo Qingtong were very similar to each other. He wouldn't give him a chance to change his mind. Thinking of this, Yi Qianxian's blue veins on his forehead jumped violently. Then he said coldly, "What bed do you want? Don't you want to sleep on the floor?" As soon as he said this, he regretted it. Damn it, didn't this mean that he allowed her to live here? Even though he wasn't completely certain, his words sounded like they were already set in stone. As expected, Luo Qingtong did not look angry at all when she heard what he said. Instead, she smiled and nodded hurriedly. Sure, I'll sleep on the floor." Luo Qingtong's smile was very treacherous. She deliberately asked Feng Yu and Feng Yu to make a wooden bed, so that she could force Yi Qianxian to say what he just said. This time, his wish came true. Happy, smiling, she moved her mattress off Yi Qianxian's bed and made a mattress on the floor next to his bed. Her movements were so fast. In the blink of an eye, she had made a mattress on the floor. Yi Qianxian looked at her, and the blue veins on his forehead jumped again. He said coldly, "Sleep over there." He raised his hand and pointed at the entrance of the tent. That place was the furthest away from Yi Qianxian's bed. Luo Qingtong looked and shook her head decisively. "No, it's so far away. How can you protect me? It's safer here." Chapter 25:20. Yi Qianxian was so angry that he almost laughed. Did she have the right to bargain with him? He raised his hand and was about to carry Luo Qingtong over. But inexplicably, when he saw Luo Qingtong wrapped in a cocoon, he thought of the tricks that Luo Qingtong played with him in bed. At that time, that woman was also wrapped in the quilt like a silkworm and refused to come out. She looked cunning and cute, full of all kinds of spiritual aura. She was not as fierce and domineering as she was outside at all. When that woman was cold, she was like a Jura, cruel and heartless. When she was gentle, she was like a cunning fox, a mysterious woman in the world. Beautiful, arrogant, wild, cunning, and wanton, she was all because of her. Yi Qianxian's hand stopped in the air. He didn't throw Luo Xiaoqi over. The scene of her being wrapped in a cocoon touched his heartstrings, so he didn't continue to move. "Well, you can go first." Taking a deep breath, Yi Qianxian decided not to argue with Luo Xiaoqi. It was just one night. If she wanted to sleep with him, he would sleep with her. His voice was cold. Bei Qing and Feng Yu left as ordered. They were just a little surprised by Yi Qianxian's indulgence of Luo Xiaoqi. But Luo Qingtong was so similar to the evil doctor. It was true that Master sometimes couldn't do anything to her. Alas, they just hoped that they could find the evil doctor as soon as possible. With that thought in mind, they immediately left. After they left, Yi Qianxian went straight to his bed. Because Luo Qingtong occupied the empty space in front of his bed, he had to go around to the end of the bed to get on the bed. Not wanting to be entangled with Luo Qingtong anymore, Yi Qianxian directly lay on the bed and turned off the light. In an instant, the tent was dark. Luo Qingtong moved in the cocoon and then slowly showed her head. She looked at Yi Qianren lying on her side with her back facing her, and a smile appeared on her face. This man didn't bring her to the door? Luo Qingtong just thought that Yi Qianxian would throw her to him. She didn't expect that he acquiesced to her sleeping here. Sure enough, he had a special feeling for her. Luo Qingtong had been thinking very clearly recently. From the first time Yi Qianren tried to find out his identity, to every time she interacted with him. This man was both impatient and didn't hurt her. Obviously, even if she had changed her appearance and gender after she took the small illusion elixir, the man still recognized her. But this recognition was just a feeling. Also, because she had turned into a man, he felt that his recognition was an illusion. But even so, Yi Qianxian subconsciously didn't want to hurt her. Otherwise, based on the fact that she had offended Yi Qianren time and time again, if it was someone else, they would have been dealt with badly by Yi Qianren. There was absolutely no chance for her to get close to him. But at this moment, this man retreated step by step as she approached him again and again. Luo Qingtong's heart was filled with sweetness. She looked at Yi Qianxian's back, which seemed to be asleep but was actually tense. She chuckled and then fell asleep peacefully. That's right, she fell asleep. Luo Qingtong didn't just want to sleep here for one night. She wanted to sleep here every night in the future. So this night, she wouldn't do anything. And because Yi Qianxian was sleeping not far from her, she slept very soundly. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.